The flag salute, please. Pledge allegiance.
Flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so I first wanted to welcome the new planning commissioners. On my right is Brooke Cisco, and on my left is Scott Jacobson. Welcome.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming in. All right, this is when we take topics from the floor, not on a public hearing. We're limited to 5 minutes per topic.
Good evening. Stephen Toski, Citizen St. Helens. I'm calling about, or I came to talk to you about the very important meeting tomorrow with the city council. To help prepare you for that meeting to discuss sites for the police station. And there's a lot of issues floating around on this. I think it would be a huge mistake to be revisiting this planning commission's judgment after a full hearing that the proposed site was unlawful and should not move forward with a conditional use permit. That would be a waste of time and effort, and efforts in that regard are counterproductive and are a gigantic rabbit hole. For example, the April 2020 email from Jacob is: our flood code says construction of new critical facilities such as police stations shall be permissible if no feasible alternative exists. If this is going to be the site explored for a new police station, we don't want to have egg on our face due to the floodplain stuff. That's April 2020. Okay, we got egg on our face. Okay, let's move away from that and talk about this commission being a planning commission, this commission going forward with its duties to our citizens, and talk about what's in the best interest for our citizens. There is a plan for the economic redevelopment of the Holton Business District. That is in the plan. That was never discussed. The planning department was completely circumvented. And I asked Jenny to put together some, I put together some slides. So this is the site on the corner by the current police station. That is blight. The absolute blight. Nobody's doing anything with that property. I say we eminent domain that property if they don't sell it to us. I know there's a contract right now for the purchase of that property. And so there's already a price. So I don't think it's going to be a very controversial thing to say we want that property. We'll pay you whatever it is you guys have agreed to. It's not going to be that much money. And that is next to our police station. That's site number one. That would be, I think, our first preference. It's in the Holton Business District. Getting rid of that ugliness and redeveloping this into a nice area, I think is in the best interest of all of our citizens. It forwards the overall business plan. This idea of moving this police station to this location fit into no overall plan. And again, our planning department was excluded. There was advice requested and given, not heeded. And we haven't now I think the council is very receptive to trying to figure out where this thing should go. The second place is is also in the, so that's the blight to get rid of. Just go ahead and scroll down, would you please, Jenny? And then the next site is the Wayne Wygant site, which is really more of a storage site. Scroll down a little more. That's also in the Holton Business District, also blight. So getting rid of blight on an investment is our best move. And if you guys just go down Columbia Boulevard, you're going to be able to see these two things. I think that one of the things that's been completely out of control is the cost of this thing. When I studied this record. Okay, you want a report on this? I could sit down and talk to you guys about it. I don't think Jennifer, Commissioner Shoemaker was on the commission. And I don't think the amount of money that they were planning to spend was ever really seriously discussed. I mean, they came out of this thing thinking we're gonna spend $20 million. That's a ridiculous amount of money. And I think this plan commission be sitting down and saying, we want this thing built for $8 million. Why can't we build a police station for $8 million? So let's take the bull by the horns, move this thing in the right direction. The last site that's potentially being discovered, talked about is next to the sheriff's department. That's in a 500-year flood zone, different legal considerations than a 100-year flood zone. The 17.46.0506, the provision that we ran afoul with, not an issue as far as I know with the sheriff's issue. Great idea, moving that in there. Consolidation of resources would be good. And being on the budget committee, I can tell you that our police have negotiated very aggressively with our city. It's an extreme situation that we're trying to fund potentially. And I think there may be future ideas of the city deciding, how much law enforcement in this area is gonna be taken up by the sheriff, how much is law enforcement is gonna be taken up by the city. Can we afford this large of a police department? And having some symbiosis of a location there makes a lot of sense, and it doesn't have the same legal considerations as the flood zone. So good luck tomorrow.
Anything else? On the agenda?
Hello, my name is Brady Freeheim. I first want to protest against the two planning commission members, David Rosengard and Charles Kasner. David's not here apparently, but who are both documented liars. I still protest that you're on this commission, and I think that your presence on this commission degrades the entire commission, and that you should both be asked to leave or leave. I am also want to talk about the police station. I don't even believe that we need a new police station. I think that that entire project is a ridiculous project. The police station needs storage. They don't need a new station. We could build a storage unit for a couple of $1 million and move their evidence locker. They have, if you've gone through the police station, it's evidence that is storage. And the whole entire project should be revisited. We need to build storage. We can build a storage unit for a couple of $1 million, secure storage and a garage. And you could then take the half of the police station's physical structure, if you look at it, is being used as a garage. You could move that and remodel that garage and make it part of the police station. And if you move the evidence locker out and the armor and that equipment, you would have plenty of room in the existing station. And you could do that for maybe $5-6 million bucks instead of, Steve was wrong, it's not 20, it's close to $30 million for a police station. It was 22 plus, and that was in $20. So it's a stupid plan. And the next thing is your temporary meeting tomorrow with the joint meeting with the city about vacant storefronts. One of those sites that we just saw for an alternate location for the police station is actually a Main Street board member. So if you're asking for Main Street to talk to you about vacant storefronts, well, one of their board members has a business that Mr. Toffke says is blight. So unless you're just looking to get information from them about how not to do storefronts, they're probably not a good person to ask. The president of Main Street has the building down here that has had sheets in the windows for 2 years on Main Street. So again, I don't know that this is a good resource to talk to those individuals about how to improve storefronts when they themselves are sort of in violation of having a storefront. That's bad, or certainly not ideal. And finally, on your proactive items, which you still never put on here, and I'm really hoping that one day you'll add it. The Plaza, something we can done with Plaza. Every year, we're gonna have a mud bath. And I think should come from this committee. I think that we need to do bricks in the plaza. It'd actually be a fundraiser. I think we could pay for the majority of it by selling bricks. Much like we did with the splash park. A lot of that money was come by selling bricks. And you're not gonna have 50,000 people in our plaza on grass and it never be a mud bath. And if you proactively said with the county that we want to have a plan, because it's actually county owned property, but the city maintains it, that we want to put bricks in there. I think it's a solution. I think it should come from this committee. Thank you.
Mine or? Great. Planning Commission minutes dated February 13th. I had one correction. It was on page 2 of 5. The sentence right above in favor, it says just adding mirrored glass. I didn't recall it as mirrored glass, I thought it was opaque glass. We talked about both. Did they talk about mirrored? You got a motion? So moved. Second.
Okay.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes from February 13th, 2024. Is that all I need to say on them? Call a vote. Oh, I'm gonna call a vote.
I think you guys can vote on it, even
That's
though
why I was
it's.
stumbling a little.
I think,
I'll start lobbying then.
Yeah.
Okay, aye.
I,
Aye.
excuse me.
What do I say?
Motion passes.
Motion passes. I appreciate everybody's patience tonight. This is my first time chairing, so. All right, to our first hearing. The Historic Resource Review. At 175 First Street. It is now 6:14. The public hearing is open. This is a quasi judicial land use hearing. The subject of the hearing is a request for a historic resource review. The subject property is identified on the county assessor's maps as lot 3600 on map 4N1W-3BA. The applicant is Huck Wilkin. The owner is Bartlett House LLC. Because quasi-judicial proceedings require the observance of certain procedural formalities, we will take a few moments to cover some preliminary matters and required statements. Does any member of the commission wish to declare a potential or actually conflict of interest or bias in the matter? None? Does any member of the commission wish to declare an ex parte communication or site visit?
I walk by it every day.
I will just say that I'm very familiar with the property as a board member of the Historical Society on our walking tour, but I don't feel like it's a bias that will affect anything, so. Does anyone from the audience object to the ability of a commissioner to make a fair decision? Generally, the order of proceedings will be as follows: required statement, staff report, applicant's presentation, those in favor of the application, neutral testimony, those opposed, rebuttal by applicant, final questions, close of the record, deliberations, and decisions. Following statements are required to be made at the commencement of the hearing pursuant to City Code and ORS 197.7975. The following is a list of the applicable substantive criteria for this decision. SHMC .17.36.040.3 criteria for alteration. All testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed toward the applicable substantive criteria as described or the criteria in the comprehensive plan or land use regulation, which the person believes applies to this decision. Failure to raise an issue, including constitutional or other issues related to the proposed condition of approval in this hearing in person or in writing, or failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the approving authority an opportunity to respond to the issue, precludes appeal to LUBA, the Land Use Board of Appeals, on that issue, and precludes an action for damages in circuit court. In the hearing, staff report.
Golden. Thank you for that. So tonight we're looking at a property you've all probably seen many times before up on First Street. When I was preparing for this, I realized how visible this building is from 3 streets, really. You can see it from St. Helens, you can see it from First, Columbia, and then even on the back street. So this property is a designated landmark on our locally designated landmarks list. And so any alterations on the outside trigger this public hearing tonight. Our applicant Huck has submitted alterations which include 3rd-story window replacements, exterior fire escape repair, and a new mechanical unit on the outside. So as with all historic reviews, we kind of look at the history of the building. Huck has done a great job providing each facade and the changes proposed, so I'll walk through that. So this property, it was built in 1886. It's called the Samuel Miles House. And Samuel Miles, according to the CCMA, our Museum Association, was deputy sheriff in 1860 and then elected full-blown sheriff 2 years later in 1862. And he was the 2nd sheriff in Columbia County. So that's pretty interesting about the house. It's not often we see historic structures built, 1886 is really early for the history of St. Helens. So it's a significant home. The 1984 historic district noted that there were a couple changes to the outside. Even in 84, these changes were noted. I wanted to point out specifically that 2 dormer windows were added to the east side of the roof. And you'll see in photos here. So here's an original 1908 photo provided by the applicant. I'm assuming he got that somewhere. Maybe the Museum Association provided it or something.
It was a picture that was in the house,
Oh, okay, well,
the common area of the house.
I trust it because those dormers are not there. You can see them added here. This is the same facade in that photo. So these were the 2 that the historic nomination had noted were not original. And then this photo is kind of cool. I got a similar one from CCMA. It's in 1911, so a couple years after the home was built, showing the Miles family on their porch on Christmas. Just kind of neat. So the proposal, like I mentioned, focuses on the 3rd story. So I'll kind of walk through. So historic resource review, we have 12 criteria. I'm going to focus mostly on 3 of those criteria. The other ones are pretty self-explanatory. The main one I think is H, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But first we'll just walk through the proposal. So the east elevation, this is the side that faces south first, so up on the bluff. Kind of the front of the house. It's just set back from the road a little bit. So on this side, these are the 2 dormer windows that the nomination was talking about. These are both vinyl double hung windows, and he's proposing to replace them to fiberglass. So all of the window replacements are fiberglass in material. And he also wants to change it from split pane, so you see the individual panes on here. To simple double hung windows, which you can see examples of on the other floors of the house. So that's the east side, keeping the same size openings. So the south side. These are single hung aluminum. The proposal won't change the opening here, but it will change them to similar size fiberglass casement, double pane windows. This proposal looks like it might be out of date. Actually, never mind, this is wrong. Okay, and then on the west side, so this is the opposite side, the side that faces second. So this is where we have a change in size. You can see the white plywood here. Someone had filled that in previously, so he wants to restore that to the original size window. And then this is a more modern fiberglass window already, so he's not proposing a replacement there. So these would be matching identical fiberglass double hung windows. And then over here, let's see, we've got, yeah, go ahead.
So you're saying the one that's very different right now
Yep.
is basically gonna be made similar to the one next to it?
Yep. Yep, I believe that's the proposal.
I can interject. When were these dormers put in?
We don't know. I don't know.
The neighbor behind me, behind the house, his grandparents were the one to do the remodel. He says in the 20s. So it's.
We certainly don't have records of it, so it would just be kind of anecdotally.
Is that Ron?
He said if he didn't know, he'd make it up, so you know, take that into consideration.
With honesty.
Yeah. That's wrong.
Let's see. So this smaller window here, I believe that's the proposal to blackout. Yeah, so this window here, he's proposing to just replace that with matching siding. And maybe you could talk about why, but I think it's just kind of an odd window. It's worth noting that all the replacements, he's noted that there's failing mechanisms in them. And there's a couple photos of the vinyl ones in particular not closing correctly, and then deteriorating wood. And then also just the inefficiency of single pane. And that's an important thing to note, because when we're talking about replacement, we need to make findings that they're not repairable, or that they're just so, dysfunctional that it's not worth saving or salvaging. Just a reminder, none of these are original to the home, since that third floor was added later, but they are, some of them are probably over 100 years old and can gain, historical significance on their own. And so the staff report kind of talks about that and making findings related to that. So the north side, this is the side that's kind of the hardest to view from any of the side streets. And this is fortunately also the side that the ugly fire escape is on, so that's great. So on the north side, there's a shed window with one window, or a shed dormer with one window. And then the dormer has a wood awning single pane window. The proposal is to replace this with a similar fiberglass slider and replace the trim to match the other windows. So what he's talking about here is that you'll notice the trim on that smaller window is extra large. So he's gonna match that to the rest of that.
That's the one you're saying would be a slider? The window?
Replace with a similar side fiberglass slider and replace the trim. Yep. Yeah. And then the other one is functioning as the fire egress. And so he talks about wanting to replace that with a single fiberglass casement window, and trying to match the design of the other third story windows, fiberglass, of course.
Casements that look like double hungs, or casements that are?
It's a good question. Yeah, let's ask the applicant. And then there's the photos of the deterioration. Yeah, these are those vinyls that are just wonky, some photos of the hardware. And I didn't mention this at the beginning, but the reason he's renovating the third floor, originally it was 2 separate units. And he's converting it just down to 1, and so he's doing a complete remodel of the third floor to make it one bigger. It was, I went up there, it was really tight units. So I think overall, the whole space will be, more livable. And then he also noted that the casement windows are proposed to maximize airflow. I think that's just an important change, because it is a change in design when you propose casements where there weren't casement windows before. So fire,
Does he need the square footage of the glass to be what, a casement or egress or anything? Instead of opening a window?
well, so. I talked with our building official about, well, we both did, about just the fire escape in general. It's not a fire escape that would meet today's code. It would be an exterior a staircase, not a ladder like this one. And so he said you could make modifications that would help bring it to code, but there is no code to meet because it's not, it would change the whole dynamic. So I think the window size change is to make it more functional, but there's not a number he's trying to get to, as far as I understand, not a required number from our. If I don't know if that answers your question, but
We can ask him.
yeah. So speaking of the fire escape, so here's what it looks like from the ground. The main modification he's proposing is to extend this ladder so it touches the ground. There's like a missing piece, original. And then I think he's gonna make some safety improvements to the railings and things like that, that won't change the appearance too much. I also noted this before, but this side is not visible at all from the street. There's large landscaping and buildings. You just can't see it at all. So the ductless heat pump, originally, when we were talking about this proposal, he had fashioned an attachment to the 3rd story with the heat pump, and I really recommended he look at alternatives that wouldn't attach it in such a visible location on the 3rd story. And so he worked to find another location which would be on the ground and then have interior wiring for the cooling system and everything else. All of that would be interior in the house, and not be attached to the outside. So I think that's a really good solution there. He talks about removal of a lot of these exterior communication wires, all things that help improve the aesthetics of the house. Not really something for our review though. So that's all I have for the presentation of his materials. I think we can open it up to testimony and then go back to the findings and talk about it.
Applicant have a presentation? You have a presentation that you'd like?
I don't have anything to add to that. I mean, certainly, I could add a couple things to it. That's my approach, is that right? My name is Huck Wilkin. I'm the proposal of these changes. Let's see, first to answer your question, yes, where that fire escape is, I would hope to add just a single window where there are 2 now, so that, and they would open up without a divider, which would get the minimum width for egress. The other casements actually would match the ones that are in that window and the one on the west side as well, which are actually casements. But if you go back up one picture, those split pane windows swing out, but there's still a divider in the middle, which makes them, and the ones above the fire escape are the same design. So yes, that would be to make that. And I did hear that it wasn't a requirement to get that window egress, but it would be high on my priority list. I think that's not a bad idea, because even if the fire escape is not what we would build today, it's still completely usable as one, so I would hope people could get in and out. Let's see, and then working backwards through the discussion, there was the heat pump. I met with one contractor said around back where the picture was. Another one said it ought to be right there next to the fire escape, actually on the north side and not on the east side. I'm sorry, the west side away from the street. They're both invisible from the street, but this side gets less sun on the north side and is much better for the air conditioning part of that unit for hot days. Since it does both, it's not as good for the heat pump part, which is also important, but it's the difference he said was mostly, you know, back here. This side has all the utilities that you don't see the gas. All the gas meters are right there next to the fire escape, and then the ductwork could run up next to the fire escape or maybe inside of it. Once we started looking at the interior routes for the ductwork, can you go back, Jenny, to the west side?
First page, right?
This one right there. Some of the ductwork is going up that external, just kind of chute that's there, which is not a really pretty piece of the house and kind of tacked on with plywood. So that's how some of the plumbing right now gets up there. So we're trying to avoid all that. And I would like to remove that, but that's further down the line if we can get all the plumbing and everything else done. So that was one minor change I thought to that.
Small window, why are you doing a slider on that shed dormer?
Oh, yeah, actually, and this is the window that I'm just blanking out. Because but we'll answer that question first. There's the shed door. No real reason. And if, you know, if the commission has something to suggest there, I'm totally open to that. Right now it has an awning, an interior awning, which is awkward in a space. And I just wanted something that wasn't gonna enter the room as much as this awning that comes in. So that made sense to me as it's a long, narrow window to slide back and forth, but I'm not wedded to that idea at all. Yeah. And then back, was it down? That little one I'm removing, oh no, back up, the little one I'm removing.
Oh, it's on this picture too. No, it's not, sorry.
All these ups and downs, there we go, yeah. There was a bathroom put in with a wall right next to those windows, and so that was the only window there, and it's just a tiny little thing, and it's not, it's somebody made it.
Made out of?
It's wood and a single pane piece of glass, and it's like, got a little hook, an eye and a hook to open it, you know, it's, I think there are door hinges on it, so it's a pretty crude window right now. And my thought was, I'm gonna leave that room as one room and not put that wall back in, so I would like to just get that. She agrees to it.
While you're on the window, are you talking about matching the siding that is on the house today with that filling in? Okay.
Yeah, they have, I mean, the whole house, that's all asbestos siding, so, but now they have concrete, makeup siding, so I can get in there and replace. Like for
Beautiful beveled siding underneath.
with a bunch of nail holes in it. Yeah. Yeah, it would.
So that is something I realized I missed in the proposed conditions about making sure that matches aesthetically as best as it can. That might be something the commission considers adding. He plans on doing it, it sounds like anyway, but just to be safe. You never know what might happen to Huck and someone else could take the project on and.
It sounds like to me, what it sounds like is that what he's doing to the third floor is gonna make it look more like the second floor. The windows are gonna look more consistent with a traditional double hung window instead of all these hodgepodge of different. Cause it seems like every opening on that third floor looks different.
Yeah, there's vinyl, metal or aluminum.
They go this way, they go this way.
Yeah, and then there's multiple pane, yeah, so.
If it starts looking more like the second floor, it'll look like it was all meant to be that way.
Yeah, the house has suffered from many repairs.
Yeah. Whatever was
There's-
on sale that year,
What's that?
whatever was on sale that year.
Oh, yes.
Where I say there's more vinyl windows in the landfill than there are diapers.
Oh, yeah.
Can you tell us the difference between fiberglass windows and vinyl windows?
Fiberglass is certainly more expensive. Depending on the window, it can be painted to look like wood. It's to vinyl, it's just smooth.
And I actually brought some literature about it from just an article from This Old House.
I'm not a building
Interested in literature.
material expert.
Part of what I like, if the discussion is open to the vinyl versus fiberglass, what I like is it's a harder material. So it doesn't bend over time as much as the vinyl. And
But on the third floor there, that's a substantial investment. Grew up in the air like that, and to replace them again.
yeah, well, and that's partly why I didn't want to do just wood windows, is because the maintenance on the third floor on a rental house is a little more difficult. There are windows that have a vinyl or aluminum exterior and a wood interior, which are pretty nice. They're also they're more expensive, and I do worry about just printing that over to whoever ends up renting it. You know, the maintenance on the wood window is definitely higher. But you know, I did a cost comparison sheet of all that too, if the commission wants to take a look at that kind of thing.
Can summarize it for us?
Yes, I can. If I do, it's a 92% increase to go from all fiberglass to all wood. If it goes, it's only a 20% increase going from all fiberglass to fiberglass on the exterior, wood on the interior. So I thought that might be a nice option if the commission was really concerned about the wood interior part. And there's also aluminum clad, so aluminum on the outside and wood on the inside. And that would be a 42% in, so, you know, I'm looking at around $10,000 if just for the windows if it's fiberglass. And then so to go all to wood, it bumps it up to 16.
And they're still aware of that right now.
I do have multiple copies of this.
Yeah, it's online.
There's a comment here about the paint color of the house. Are you planning on painting the house as part of this?
No, it's the paint color of the windows.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the windows yeah, so that's actually a good time to mention that. So the
Right.
commission did get an email or letter from Al Peterson, who said that we should not require the windows to be white to match the house, and that there are examples of other homes of this style which have colored windows and then like different trim alterations, and there's examples of that. So I mean, I'm just following what the criteria say, which is that you
Right,
can
but he's
match the color.
But repainting the house is a separate conversation altogether.
Right,
But
but we're
obviously
still-
he's gonna make the windows match what's there right now.
I mean.
he's not gonna have the third-
that.
I mean, he
You could get
Sure.
black.
Yeah.
All pink on the third floor, it's the ladies' floor.
I'm not planning on painting the house on the exterior, and I was planning on having white, however that ended up. If you know this fiberglass you can get in many different colors, it's actually made in that color, so
Oh, okay.
it's not a paint, which is one of the real advantages is it doesn't have to need to be repainted.
But you can paint it.
I believe you can. Yep. I am not positive about that. That's an interesting question. I don't know if you can paint the fiberglass.
I think if it's the right kind of paint, you can paint anything that stands still.
Is your intention to,
Bottom of both, that's fiberglass.
Yeah, just thanks.
your intention eventually to replace all the windows?
Well,
The original windows in the sites,
I think the bottom floors are all originals. They're old, they're all, you know, the ones that haven't been replaced are maybe are gorgeous windows. They're sieves in terms of heat. So. I know I don't have that intention right now, but I certainly enjoy bringing, I have enjoyed bringing this house up to date. And energy efficiency is a part of that. And what I was hoping to do, well, I was looking into like trying to make those existing casement windows that are on the gable end as like shutters that could be on the outside of them. But it didn't make any sense at all. So I'm doing this remodel because the tenants moved. And so I got into it, and actually one tenant moved, I got into it, and there was so much knob and tube repairs and really bad mold in the bathroom and stuff that I couldn't see putting that all back together and for a 400 square foot apartment. So I decided to update the whole thing. I'll have to see how this renovation goes, and if it turns out to be worthwhile for me, then I'll be looking at the rest of the house eventually. Because I do think energy efficiency is just going to be more and more important as we move forward.
And then could we look at the fire escape again?
Yeah.
You talked about adding a section to the bottom of the fire escape,
Yeah. Oh,
so that means, and that's on the invisible part of the house and is shielded. Would that be a danger for people trying to get into the house? Went all the way to the ground, because I know in the cities, that upper piece slides down.
right.
It's not mounted on the side of the house, so you can't just go up and decide to go in the side of the house. And also just where it's rental, I don't know if I want people to try to go in and out of the house that way.
I had considered security, and I had initially looked into one of those ladders that lowers, but they are astronomical. And really they're kind of, they're not made for this size at all. There's a possibility of creating a door at the top of that easily opens and doesn't open coming from below, something like that.
And then,
But I hadn't put that into this proposal.
will it be required that he repaint it
The fire escape
to match the house?
to match the house.
I don't know, is
I
it
mean,
painted
that's
now?
certainly a consideration you all have within your.
I didn't know what color it was.
Painted black and really, I mean, but mostly it's rust at this point.
Okay.
Rust color.
That's
Mostly it's a
very
lovely.
deteriorated. And so, I mean, I don't know if it's supposed to be that color, or if that's what color it's become. I was just asking.
I was considering putting a protective coat on it after doing a lot of grinding and finding others. I just need to find out what metal on there is still viable. The good news is turns out it was forged metal and not, I can't remember the other kind, where they stretch it. So it's the rust is only on the outside on this old kind of construction. So that's exciting, but I had considered repainting it with the black, but I'm open to it.
I had no preference, I was just curious.
Anybody else have any questions for the applicant? Thank you.
Thank you.
How far is it from that deck? How far is it from where the ladder stops to the ground?
10 feet. And that's a flower bed right there that's been built up by a tenant. So it's really, you know, that's maybe a temporary flower bed, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Could be 12.
All right.
Soft landing.
What's that?
Soft landing.
Oh, yeah, no, it's all compost down there, and I think there's roses though, so.
There is a black cat that uses that fire escape.
That's really good. It's. The tenant that moved took that cat.
The cat,
Took the cat with him, yeah.
I hadn't seen it.
You enter that apartment from the interior of the house.
I'm sorry?
Main entrance
Yes.
is inside the house, correct? They're not gonna use this for anything but emergency.
Oh, that's correct, yes, yeah.
Right.
Okay, Thank you. Oh, and just if there's, if there's suggestions to make, I'm not, just trying to get this done, so it's, I'm not opposed to a lot of ideas.
And stop the deterioration of the inside if the windows aren't right.
Yes. Thank you.
Do we have any testimony in support of the application? Seeing none. Any neutral testimony, those who are not in favor or against the proposal? None. Any requests for testimony in opposition of the application? Seeing none, so we need no rebuttal, I would say. Does the or does the commission have any final questions?
Is there, with the, did a bit of a dive. It is an 1886 structure, so I'm wondering if there's any, codes that have to be complied with that preserved by record, what is being changed. Like for instance, the small window. And if there's some type of detailed photographs of that, or just for future reference.
That's a great question, Commissioner Jacobson. So, actually, if you look on the last page of your staff report, one of the St. Helens Municipal Code criteria says, prior to alteration, current photographs and or drawings of all elevations shall be provided to the city for its public records. Photographs and drawings shall be archival quality. Proof of such shall be provided with the photographs and or drawings. So our code contemplates that, just documenting the changes. So we have all of this, it's a digital record and a physical file that we keep.
Okay. I
Document.
read, I did a dive into the SHPO and that type of stuff.
Yeah.
With preservation, I don't remember where I see some things where I see.
Oh, sure. Yeah, no, it's a great question.
And is that conditionalized to have those digital products before the,
So the finding on that one was that we have current digital photos and hard copies of the application package. So it's been met. Yeah. Usually we don't condition, well, I don't want to say usually, but if it's met, sometimes we don't include a condition about it because it's already been addressed. Yeah. Yeah. Good questions.
Okay, so at this time we close the public record, correct? Yep. And deliberating.
So now would be a good time for me to point out the red stuff in the staff report. So condition H is the main one that I'm asking for some findings from the commission on. Obviously, anything else you want to talk about and add findings about, we certainly can. But this one talks about deterioration of historic features shall be repaired rather than replaced, where the severity of deterioration requires replacement of a distinctive feature. The feature shall match the old in design, color, texture, and where possible, materials. So here's where we're not saying you have to put wood windows, potentially unless you want to make that a condition. So the commission needs to make findings that deterioration, first of all, requires replacement, I think has been clear. And then if you agree with the material replacement of fiberglass, that this is an appropriate substitute given the stuff we talked about, longevity, environmental considerations, the maintenance of wood and that sort of thing. If you don't agree with that, you should make a finding to talk about why. Why do you want? And it could just be that you want the original material.
Well, because it doesn't meet the Secretary of Interior's.
Well, it has to be in our criteria, right?
well, as Commissioner Carlson was talking about, I mean, you have to balance it with the preservation of the building itself. These wouldn't have, fiberglass or whatever, have a better chance to preserve the fabric of the building. I mean, there's a balance between the two.
I have to say, I strongly disagree with making them white. If you go to the window with everybody, or the photograph of everybody standing in the porch, you can see that the window sashes aren't white.
Yeah. Is there a code that's, for the painting of these?
Well, it's suggesting that they would make a finding that they light.
Yeah.
That's why I was asking if all the windows eventually were gonna be replaced, because if you look at those sashes there, they're not white.
So that was just a recommended condition because of this criteria that talks about color matching, but you don't have to make that condition at all. You can scratch that.
How do you know that they're not white?
Well, if you blew that center picture up right there, you can see the window sashes behind them are white. The sash part is the part that moves up and down. They're not white.
It was just, the point being is it's a black and white photo that's brown and white, so.
Yeah, it's just.
it's like,
It's darker
you really know what color
than
they're-
white.
Yeah, but I mean, we're not mandating that they paint them something other than what the house is currently painted.
No, but what I'm saying is we shouldn't mandate that they keep them white.
There's a really nice structure, and
Right.
if they did like what L. Peterson said, is, would like them to have the ability to do that in the future.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, so we can scratch number 3.
That's number one.
Reach it, isn't it? Right here.
It's signed his name.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just a citizen.
So in the report,
I think we have a copy we can give you.
I would love to talk to them. Yeah. The local architect.
Can you give him that? I think that's all right. Yeah, thank you.
Did everybody all the commissioners get a chance to read?
I'll email.
No, you know. And did you get a chance to read it?
Yeah, I saw it. It was in the packet.
Okay. Got more?
Did you, any other comments about the fiberglass choice? Are you comfortable with that? The alternative?
Nice on the longevity.
Yeah, okay, perfect. And then the design change from these multi-pane windows, which were not original, to just double hung, like all the things we talked about, the switches to casement. Are you comfortable with the changes in the design from the windows proposed?
Yeah, they like. Jenny's comment, it actually makes it more.
It looks more like,
It
looks more like the floors below.
Okay, perfect.
Except for, I have issue with the sliding window,
Okay,
1800s house.
so that's on which elevation?
The 3rd floor, or no, is it the one that goes to the fire escape?
The shed
Oh, no,
window.
that one's
One of the door.
behind. How tall is that? How big is that skinny window?
This one here, it is 12 inches tall.
How are you gonna make a casement window that's this big? That goes up and down?
Basement is,
Oh, no, I mean, but how do you make a window that goes this way?
right now, does that window open, is it operable now?
It is operable. I'm not. I don't think it would need to be.
That it doesn't need to open?
The interior is still under design. So,
I guess if it's all one big room, but I was just thinking for cross ventilation.
yeah, I mean, the breeze up there is really one of the nicest parts of the apartment. So I was going for as much of that as possible. I didn't like that.
It's an awning window right now.
It's an awning that goes up.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think-
it goes
The space.
up and in.
Oh, in.
Yeah.
Like it's like a head chopper.
Yes, it is.
Doesn't make any sense.
I'm open to other ideas. I don't know what else might go there, though.
Is that an original window?
No, that's with the other dormers.
Got added in the 20s?
Yeah.
Yeah, the siding was altered too, or it's trimmed. Good trim.
I don't know how else everybody else feels, but I don't like the idea of a sliding window there. If you can see it.
I could pass that by my window supplier. See if they've got any other ideas on how operable windows like that might.
And you said the window over here that leads to the fire escape is gonna be one that goes like this.
That's right. Yeah.
Is it this or this?
The one on the fire escape, actually, all of them, they're in pairs, so. But the one in the fire escape, I was hoping to do one window that opened all the way, and the other ones I just made as pairs that open up. the same way, but with the private.
That was, I was thinking that from the ground, you could see it, but you can't see this from the ground on the side. It would look the same.
Don't like either would be,
But I don't
I
like
want them
them.
to be double hung. I mean, if you're, it's a rehabilitation, it's not a restoration, so you would never put a sliding window in.
100-year-old house.
But there's also thought that you also don't do anything that can't be undone, and I suppose that could be undone. But I think
Because
it's a
the
shame
hole's not,
'cause
the hole's not changing shape and it's not original. Taking the divided
That's
is,
why I was asking about egress, if you needed the square footage of all the glass to make it a legal egress, then it would do hardship on him to rewire.
right.
But historically, I think it's a mistake.
We can just condition it to not be a slider and let him decide the appropriate style, if you feel comfortable with that.
Yeah, it's fine.
I don't like that.
If there isn't any other alternative, but, you might have to come back and ask. That it,
There are.
I'm working on a 1908 house right now and the window did the same, it went in like this. I mean, if I kept who I thought it was. But it'd be problematic, I suppose.
That upstairs is really tiny. Have you been on that third floor?
I've been in that house, but I don't know that I was on the third floor.
I knew somebody that lived on the unit on this side. And so I was in it. It was tiny and it was hot.
Okay, so our conditions are on page 5. We are adding a condition about the blackout window having matching siding to, make sure we don't get a plywood filling. But make sure, and then removing, or let's alter condition 3. To not be about the color of the window, but be that this north side shed dormer is not replaced with a slider.
And so we're saying that it would, be anything would be replaced with fiberglass and not vinyl. We're agreeing to,
Yes.
give me that
The
leeway.
proposal is for fiberglass on all. Yeah, and that's pretty clear in the findings already, so. I think I have enough to, you guys are, unless you have other things you want to talk about.
Move we approve the proposal with changes as discussed with staff.
And second,
Did I say that? All in favor, that's fine. I was really running that in my mind going, that doesn't sound right. All those in favor, aye.
I,
Aye.
And am I a voting member now or no? No.
As the person leading the meeting, the same rules apply to the normal chairperson. In that, you don't vote except for cases like to break a tie.
And then we need a motion for signature on the findings for this
So
one.
moved. Second.
I,
So let me explain that to the new people after you voted. So the quote unquote normal process. If you as a group wanted to see the findings before the signature, the findings would come to the next meeting. And then you'd be like, oh, okay, this looks cool. Though that is rare. 99% of the time. The commission's been okay with the chairperson who signs looking at that and going, yeah, that's what we talked about. And it just makes it quicker and efficient. And so that's why we asked that second question, is to just let those findings be written. Have the chairperson deal with it instead of bringing it to you.
His process.
Yeah. Try to keep things as quick as possible in government.
The final written decision of the planning commission may be appealed to the city council. The notice of decision will be mailed to all persons who testified or submitted comments, and the appeal deadline will be included in the notice. In closing this here, I just want to say a couple comments. The only reason we're hearing this is because it's a city landmark, so 4 lots away. Construction without review. Thrilled that we got this opportunity thrilled that he's doing the house. I'm thrilled that we got the opportunity to review it. And
Did you see the color?
no. And I want to also say that Samuel Niles was known to be a generous man. He was known to loan money to people without the expectation of ever getting it back. If somebody needed a hand up, he was the guy to give them the hand up, so. Right. It is now 7:01 p.m. Public hearing is now open. This is a quasi judicial land, that's a mouthful. Use hearing, the subject of this hearing is to a request for a variance ×2. The subject property is identified on the county assessor's map as lot 8700 on map 5N1W-33DC. The applicant is Wayne Wygant. The owner is 1771 Columbia Boulevard LLC. Because quasi judicial proceedings require the observance of certain procedural formalities, we will take a few moments to cover some preliminary matters and required statements. Does any member of the commission wish to declare a potential or actual conflict of the interest or bias in the matter? I will say that I've done business with Mr. Wygant, but I'm not a voting member.
Just pointing out, Wayne has a hard time hearing, so just make sure you're speaking up. I'm gonna address him.
I have worked with Shane with the project through the PUD before. Would that be something that? No bias
You
or
feel like it creates a bias for you?
I don't think so.
It's good to disclose it, so that's good, yeah.
Does any of the commission wish to declare any ex parte communication or site visits? Okay. Does anyone in the audience, from the audience, object to the ability of a commissioner to make a fair decision? Here. Generally, the order of proceedings will be as follows: required statements, staff report, applicant's presentation, those in favor of the application, neutral testimony, those opposed, rebuttal of applicant, final questions, close of the record, deliberations, and decisions. The following statement are required to be made at the commencement of the hearing pursuant to the city code and ORS 197.7975. The following is a list of the applicable substantive criteria for this decision. SHMC 17.108.050.1. All testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed towards the applicable substantive criteria as described or other criteria in the comprehensive plan or land use regulation, which the person believes applies to the decision. Failure to raise an issue, including constitutional or other issues relating to the proposed conditions of approval in this hearing in person or in writing, or failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the approving authority an opportunity to respond to the issue, precludes appeal to LUBA, the Land Use Board of Appeals, on this issue, and precludes an action for damages in circuit court. This is where we hear the staff report.
Yes, and we did get some written testimony that we received after the staff report was done. Also from Al Peterson is the last one, so I want to make sure you have a copy of that.
That was attached to the other one.
Yeah, I just.
Wanna make sure we
consolidated on
didn't
one
miss-
page, yeah.
Okay.
Wayne, were you able to hear all that stuff? Okay.
I think I know what's going on.
You can sit up there too, if it helps.
So, the subject property for a long time, had one residence on it, and it was composed of four, old subdivision lots, the railroad addition to St. Helens. And, the variance applies to, two of those. When he purchased the property, demolished the house, he looked at an industrial property. He, on one of his visits to the site, there was a lady who yelled at him about non-residential development. That amongst some other things, motivated him to rezone the property, which he did. It's probably familiar to, at least the planning commissioners who have been here for a bit. So now it's residential. So now he's looking at residential development. And normally, a duplex on a lot is an outright permitted use. Wouldn't have to go before you. But what he wants to do is take two of those lots, put a duplex on each one. But instead of having the normal yard or setback, our code defines setbacks in yards. So when I use that term yard, it's synonymous with setback. So instead of having the normal 5-foot setback in between the two duplexes, which of course would combined would be 10 feet, he wants them to be attached. And so it's basically a variance to the setback to allow 0 instead of 5. And there's 2 variances because there's 2 lots.
Why is it not a fourplex?
And so that gets into some of Al's concerns, and it's a good question, and this is really one of the considerations for the variance. And let me get into that in the right sequence. But it's a good question.
Okay,
It's one of the things that
what I thought of when I was at home.
yeah, and it's one of the things that I think you should consider in your ultimate decision. So that's the history. It's a pretty, it's a fairly simple request. So there's a couple things to consider. One, so we have this zoning scheme which contemplates a certain quality of life. One of the aspects to advance quality of life in a zoning code is air, light, and space. One of the ways you advance or preserve air, light, and space is through your setback or yard requirements.
I thought you said airline space.
Airline space. You're watching too much news about planes being poorly manufactured. Air, light, and space. So one thing to consider is, well, first of all, there's a condition in here that says this variance applies to this specific plan. And in talking with Wayne prior to the meeting, it's not something he has issues with because this is the plan he wants. And so this plan has 7-foot side yards on the outer portion. You combine those, you have 14 feet. If you use the normal standard, 5 feet times 4, so 4 side yards, you would have 20 feet. So it's a difference of 6 feet. If you care about that, that's something to consider. The counterpoint to that would be, there's an overall goal of having diverse housing options. And we also have an aging population. And so having a mix of multi-story and single level housing product promotes that diversity. And this does promote a single level product. So that's one thing to consider. So another thing to consider, which Commissioner Carlson alluded to, was, is this a way to get away with having to comply with the rules that may apply to multifamily? So when I say multifamily, our code considers that to be 3 or more units on a lot. And in this case, it's 2 units on a lot. But we have seen situations where someone takes an assemblage of lots builds multifamily on it, and we just require it to be consolidated. So, and I don't necessarily have strong opinions on it, but if this was a fourplex, there would be a much greater array of standards that apply to it than a duplex. Duplex is pretty simple. For example, there's certain articulation standards, if the building is so big, about differences in roof height and projections and stuff like that, which don't apply. There's distances of walkways to windows and all kinds of stuff. So that's just one of the things you want to think about. But at the same time, you can think of it as just two duplexes that happen to be tied at the hip. I don't necessarily have strong opinions on it, but something to consider. The recommended conditions say that it's for the specific proposal, except, minimum variation to comply with other rules. If there's, surprises that can happen after the land use process. And that the minimum side yard for the non-attached side be 7 feet instead of the 5. That's what he proposes, so we don't see a conflict with that. But it's good to put it in writing if things do change. So really, that's all I have to say. At least for the staff report portion.
Wayne, you have anything to add?
Oh, sure. So Jacob covered the fact that this property used to be zoned light industrial. And I worked towards trying to figure out what could go on there with the side yard setbacks being 30 feet. Non-competing zones, it really gave me a very small piece of property to work with. And I didn't receive a whole lot of encouragement from neighbors. So I decided to go through a zone change, and we're here today. So I have the benefit of having built this structure before in Scappoose, Oregon. And it's got some architectural design features that I'd like to point out that are important for sunlight and stuff. It's got hip roofs. It's got a nice courtyard walking into the property. You've got patios on the back, that have covered and open for picnics. This home, side-by-side duplex, was built on 2 city lots in Scappoose, just like we have here, which is a extremely unique situation to find anything on infill that has two lots side by side. So we decided to see if this plan would fit, and it fits very well. The conflict was the fact that it would need to be on a 0 lot line, which wasn't necessarily covered by the ordinance, but you could build 4 row houses there, no more density. It's the same density that you get with row houses, or 2 duplexes, 1 on each side. That wouldn't be anywhere near as architecturally nice as this with garages. So I thought about it, and I thought that this would be the approach that I would want to take. The setback is 10 feet in the back, 28 feet on the street. Plus, there's an additional 15 feet behind the curb, so there's a lot of room and a lot of air on this property. It's zoned on the north side by light industrial. It's zoned on the west side by residential R5. Or maybe that's apartment AR zone. And then on the other 2 sides is zoned residential R5. The uses outright are single family residences, a duplex, and or row houses. So this is somewhat of a hybrid from row houses, but all of the fire codes will be met, the zero lot line construction. I talked with Mike DeRoy, our building inspector, and he confirmed that on the property line, the fire code would require 2 hours. And on the interior of the duplex, 1 hour. This is the way this structure was built 6 years ago. And I don't know what else to do, but have you asked questions? If you have any questions on it, so.
Anybody have questions of the applicant?
What's the square footage of each unit? The square footage of each unit.
They're about 750 square feet. There's two bedrooms, single bath, a very nice kitchen and a living room. There's a utility room in the back of the garage. So that people can have washer and dryer. And they're efficiency apartments, but there are no steps. And anybody can rent them, but they're obviously geared for an older clientele.
The age in place,
Pardon?
so people don't have to move when they get old.
Yeah, well, it's not an old home, but and some other thought, oh, well,
The walkways to that, are they ADA compliant?
they are not. They're not.
Do you know the differential between the size of the walkway for ADA compliant? And what this, is? I'm not sure what this is. Actual, I'm looking to find out the distance, how much wider an ADA compliant walkway would be compared to these.
Sidewalk,
Yeah, on the walkways to the houses themselves, that I'm looking at.
I think those are 5 feet when I build it. Is that what you're asking?
No,
Courtyard?
there's just the approach to the door, each home's door. I just wondered because, gonna be for seniors. And, they will be,
It can be any size we want, but I think that those are 5 feet on this particular plan.
it'd be nice to know exactly, what would need to be done to make it more suitable for people with, disabilities like that.
Well, just in the middle here, because you've got 2 doors that face each other there, to make sure there's enough access for 2 families. To be accessing through this one center door.
Well,
It's not just 1, 2, it's 1, 2, 3, 4.
For ground level multifamily, there's very specific rules about the interior of the home too, which is outside the parameters of this hearing. So whether or not the exterior walkway is meeting ADA.
It's not our business.
It's also just not, something we can mandate for the interior.
Well, I mean, I thought if it was geared towards senior clientele.
And because there are on separate lots in the future, one person could buy one duplex and one person could buy the other duplex because they can be conveyed separately.
So there's a firewall on the lot line, but not between the units.
There's a fire code of 2 hours on the property line, and in each duplex has 1 hour by code.
So one thing he could do, which he's not proposing to do, is he could take those lots. Do a 2-parcel partition on each lot, then have 4 skinny row housing lots and then build 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 dwelling per lot. And they could all be attached.
And they could all be sold.
In this case, he kind of calls it a hybrid and it's using our duplex rules, but just attaching them at the front. So you have 1 duplex per lot.
But with no space.
A 0 setback between the 2, yeah.
But giving you a single level instead of a 2-story house.
Right. Usually townhomes are multi-story because they're 25 feet wide, it's such a narrow.
And based on
Live in a skinny house.
And based on the conditions proposed, the side yards on the very outside would be 7 instead of 5, so a little bit larger.
Right, but so is there a back setback or does the 10 feet need a back setback?
There is a rear yard, which he's not asking for any variance for. And I think it is 10 feet.
And he has an extra long front, right? Is that, yeah.
Yeah, the normal
That's all
front,
shared.
the normal front yard would be 20 feet. That exceeds it by 8.
Actually, everything's not paved or concrete, there's actually green growing on the property. All right, any other questions of the applicant? Thank you, Wayne. Do we have any testimony in support of the application? Seeing none. Any neutral testimony, those who are not in favor or against the proposal? Seeing none. Any testimony in opposition of the application? How do we handle the on Peterson's? It seems he's
You all got copies and have read it?
right.
That's it?
We don't have to do anything.
Just consider it.
Okay, does Wayne have the opportunity to rebut Al's comments?
I think that would be fair to give him that opportunity.
Wayne, have you seen Al Peterson's comments? Would you like to rebut those comments?
Well, I don't really know how to rebut Al. No, I'm serious. He's a very intelligent man. I don't think he truly understands or had enough information here tonight to be able to analyze it before he made his comments. So, I'm very proud of what was built, and it really will fit the neighborhood well. I don't see it as detrimental at all to anybody, so I'm very happy with it.
If there's a firewall in between all the units, could they be sold separately then? But
Yes, so 2 lots, 1 duplex of each lot.
Convey each unit separately without the lot being separate. You could convey
You
two.
convey each duplex, but not each lot.
It could be conveyed twice.
But if they had,
So they-
if they had a firewall between all of them, the lots could be split.
There is a firewall between all of them.
No, it's only 1 hour in the duplexes.
Not without a land use application for a partition.
Okay,
You can't just,
Partitioning the lots.
right, but he couldn't partition it later.
if you met building code at the time.
Yeah, and our attached
I mean,
laws.
I don't mean to be, but this is a runaround from a fourplex. That's what it is. You can call it 2 attached duplexes, but it is a fourplex. Anybody driving down the street is gonna look at that and say that's a fourplex.
So can I'm gonna close the hearing.
Sorry, I thought you'd already done that.
Right now, we haven't closed the hearing yet, so public record of the hearing is closed. I'm assuming that the commission has no final questions. Anybody else have any final questions? Okay, closing the public record. And that gives us a deliberation. Right. Hearing no further questions from the commission and no further responses from staff, the public record is closed and this matter is returned to the table for deliberations and oral discussion. Now is the time to the commission to deliberate and vote. Oh, there's wording in bold. Am I supposed to read that? I don't have to read that part, right? Okay. All right. Deliberation? No, go.
No, because in all my years of doing stuff, we always get called on the carpet afterwards because why didn't you make them follow the rules? And that's what a variance is. We're supposed to look at it top and say, it looks like a fourplex. Smells like a fourplex. You can say, well, it's two duplex. They just sit really close together. It's like the rules are the rules, and I want to make sure that we're conscientiously going into this to know that what we're doing. We all complain because we got garages frontwards and we don't have architectural standards and we don't have this, but if we don't enforce the rules we already have, how can we pretend to make new rules and enforce them? I'm saying, that's why I'm just trying to be deliberate in what we're doing. You're the attorney.
So let's say it was a fourplex. Then it would require a conditional use permit and compliance with several other standards, including a more focused look on things like walkways, as Commissioner Jacobson mentioned. So, just for consideration.
For me, I look at it from ownership points of view, and that's not necessarily how we need to look at this hearing, but if it was a fourplex, it changes who could own the property. Whereas I'm not involved in this project at all, I want to make that clear. But if you have a duplex, somebody could purchase one side, live in the other side. Rent one side, live in one side. I think it's getting density where density belongs, and I think that there's not enough single level housing,
No, I love duplexes.
especially in. I think the conversation for me would be different if it was 2 stories, but the fact that it's single level, it opens it up to so many people that need that. Especially seniors, so. I like that part of it, single level, and
I think the aesthetic fits the area. I moved to Pole on Gulf Street, so there are a lot, and so I think it kind of fits in with the neighborhood. I guess my concern is that it actually be built once a variance is approved. If that's the way the commission wants to go, then how do we know that it will be used for this purpose?
this will say the variance is specific to this
Build.
build, right?
Yep, that's
Okay.
condition. And and just because you're fairly new at this, there is a time duration allowed for variances, and so if he doesn't act on a certain period of time. It expires, so it's not just an indefinite variance.
Yeah, and let me just read the conditions that apply to this plan, just so you're aware of it. So these variances, because it is 2, shall apply to the specific proposal presented in the application. The variance shall not apply to different plans, except minimum variation to ensure compliance with condition 3, which is maintaining that 7-foot yard, and to meet, and or to meet any other requirement. So basically, it has to be that plan with slight fudging if some other requirement comes up. And then the minimum side for the non-attached side shall be 7 feet. And so that the intent is to make sure that this variance is for this proposal, not just willy-nilly anything.
I guess, I mean, I've got some of the same problem that Jenny does in terms of, I don't have a problem with the plan or the aesthetics of it or anything that way, but it does kind of just bypass a rule that's in place. Whether that rule needs to be changed or not, I don't know, have a problem. And if you look at the criteria for granting a variance, I think it meets most of them, except for maybe B. I don't see how I can say that this meets that criteria under that.
See, there's no unique circumstances.
Right. Lots were purchased as they were, knowing that part of it and everything.
Oh, no, they were.
That's my
purchased-
concern.
They were purchased as different zone.
Yeah.
As they are, light
He
industrial.
changed his own, yeah. It's back to being self-imposed to some degree. But that's and because I agree, we get hit all the time with people who claim, well, all you all do is you grant every variance that comes before it. I know that's not true. But I think that's somewhat a perception out there.
Any other deliberation? Anybody have a motion?
I would prefer if it had the 2-hour separation between each unit.
What was it as opposed to our,
What meets the rule?
The purpose of the 2-hour separation is for to keep fire from spreading. I live in a duplex that has a 2-hour separation. They weren't required to do it. But, they wanted to separate the lots so we could each own it. The other flip side of that is quality of life. A 2-hour separation means that person in house A doesn't hear every single pin drop in house B. I mean, it's a livability issue and it's a safety issue. And it's like, and if it would be required in a fourplex. So it's not like we're asking them to jump over the moons.
It would be required in attached row home
Yeah.
configuration, not, just to be clear to everybody else, she lives in a townhome, so it's attached housing. Not a duplex.
Right. But this is what I'm saying, it's like, it's tomato, because it is 4 houses stuck together.
Yeah, it's just that the
Criteria we
words
can
you're using
consider them?
really matter in this case.
Oh.
Because of this issue, yeah.
Is that even criteria we can consider the rear wall issue? I'm confused.
I think what she's saying is she'd rather have a lot line down the middle and have them be attached row homes with firewall separation as.
I'm just asking for the firewall separation from a safety and a livability standpoint. Yeah. If you're gonna put it in the middle, it's like, I know it's a pain and I'm one vote.
Yeah, it's just a different type of development is what you're asking for. Can't mandate a firewall.
That's why I was wondering.
The firewall.
But I mean, what
What line?
we could do is say you have to have setbacks in between the 2 buildings.
Yeah.
Sure.
You say that.
Or
So-
you could say, if you want this density, you have to divide the lots and build attached row homes, which, you know, you've talked about the quality of that development as well, and there's differences.
Yeah, I mean, we have to decide where we are. I'm one person, I'm not 4 people, I'm not 5 people.
I just got the thing that you gave us from Al on this. I guess I'm wondering about the thing that he talks about when you have 3 or more attached units. Making it into a townhome rather than a duplex. And that requires the 2-hour separation between each unit. I don't know if that's the gospel or not. But that's in terms of looking at it from that way.
So yeah, what would you have to modify to make it into townhomes?
You would have to do a partition.
Yeah, you would be dividing the property, and we wouldn't be here.
There wouldn't be a variance needed.
They'd be meeting all the codes better.
Yeah, so what would happen in that case is you would take each of these lots, divide it into half. So now instead of 2 slices, you have 4 slices.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm talking about like a row home, you know.
Yes.
That's what we're talking about
Yeah,
too.
so if it's an attached single family dwelling. You would take each of these lots, divide it in half. So you have this property line here, in that case, you would have 3 midpoint property lines.
Yeah,
And then couldn't you build a duplex on each lot?
No,
Oh, you
No, no,
couldn't?
no, because our code has a specific lot size specific to attached single family dwellings, which is below the minimum lot size for a single family dwelling / duplex lot. So if it was small enough, it would only be eligible for the attached single family dwelling product. Informally known as a row home or a townhouse. And I think Jenny alluded to this earlier. The one difference, if this was, so if these 2 lots were taken and Wayne was proposing a 4-plex, so we'd have conditional use permit, we'd have all the things that we look at for multifamily development, and we would require those lots to be bound. Probably a covenant that makes sure that they remain under the same ownership, so it remains as a whole. In this case, the difference is 1 on each lot, and as Wayne mentioned, you could have a different owner for each half. So that is one difference between it looking at as a 4-plex versus 2 duplexes they have.
Discussion, or we need a motion or something?
well, I'm not good with the your issues of the variance. I think it's just, I mean, the code should evolve to help, you know. Put in these types of developments. I mean, trying to be a hard and fast against one thing, you know, we're just trying to look look forward and see, you know, what we can do to actually create something that's more aesthetic than, you know, some of these duplexes that I see around here.
Well, this is not the guy that's putting those duplexes all over town. This is the guy that puts trim around every window and he puts
That's what I'm saying.
garage doors and he
Yeah.
puts.
That's why
roller
it evolved,
skates
so you can
and-
have something, you know, more of these types of developments.
Anybody?
Like it's a creative solution. Like you can more than you know, two-story townhomes in the neighborhood.
Would like to make a motion?
I'll move that we approve.
Here a second?
I'll second that.
And just to make sure. The default approval motion would be approve with the conditions as recommended by staff.
Yes, is that how I should say it?
We just, if there's conditions, we want to make sure they're folded in.
Well, I vote we approve with the conditions recommended by staff.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
I'm in favor.
You save me for last. Just so it doesn't, a townhome doesn't mean that it's two-story. So just townhomes don't necessarily mean a row. A townhome can be single-story. It's the way it's defined. But I said aye.
Well, then hell then. I'm gonna say nay, just because of the variance.
Okay, well, that is,
Motion passes. Trying to find where I am on this paper.
Making a motion for signature.
Motion for signature. So,
So moved.
those in favor? Am I really signing?
We'll call you.
Okay. I didn't know if you're handing something here. No.
We'll see you tomorrow, so we'll hopefully have them ready by then.
Okay. Final written decision.
You got approved.
Final written decision of the planning commission may be appealed to the city council and notice of decision will be mailed to all persons who testified or submitted comments. And the appeal deadline will be included in the notice. Thank you. Right. It is now 7:38. Public hearing is now open. This is a quasi judicial land use hearing. The subject of this hearing is a request for an appeal. The subject property is identified on the county assessor map. It's lot 7200 on map 4N1W-4CA. The applicant is Daryl Tenney. Owner is Vintage Friends LLC. Because quasi judicial proceedings require the observance of certain procedural formalities, we will take a moment to cover some preliminary matters and required statements. Does any member of the commission wish to declare a potential or actual conflict of interest or bias in this matter? Seeing none. Does any member of the commission wish to declare any ex parte communication or site visits? Seeing none. Does anyone in the audience object to the ability of a commissioner to make a fair decision? Seeing none. Generally, the order of proceedings will be as follows: required statements, staff report, applicant's presentation. Those in favor of the application, neutral testimony. Those opposed, rebuttal of applicant. Final questions, close of the record, deliberation and decisions. The following statements are required to be made at the commencement of the hearing pursuant to the city code and ORS 197.0 797, section 5. The following is a list of applicable substantive criteria for this decision. SHMC, did I say it that way or say St. Helens Municipal Code? Either way.
Either way, I think if you start. If some people are new to this and they're like, what the heck does that mean? So I think it helps, people if you.
St. Helens Municipal Code 17.140.040 partition approval criteria, St. Helens Municipal Code 17.140.050 special provisions for parcels created by through the partition process. St. Helens Municipal Code 17.140.060 lot line adjustment approval criteria. All testimony, arguments, evidence must be directed toward the applicable substantive criteria as described or other criteria in the comprehensive plan or land use regulation which the person believes applies to the decision. Failure to raise an issue, including constitutional or other issues relating to the proposed conditions of approval in this hearing in person or in writing, or failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the approving authority an opportunity to respond to the issue, precludes appeal to LUBA, Land Use Board of Appeals, on this issue, and precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Staff report.
Yeah, so this is another one where we received some stuff after the staff report was done. This was actually received just this morning. So it's not something that was emailed to you. And this is some feedback from an arborist. For your reading pleasure. Okay, so this is it's kind of similar to the last one, and that's it's a large property with a house on it, though this has always been residential and the house is kind of in a corner. So the proposal is to take this large lot and there's an old deeded lot kind of in the upper north.
Jacob, excuse me for a second. It seems like everybody's reading this. Can we read it real quick before you?
Sure.
Thank you.
Arborist was hired by the applicant.
Appellant.
The applicant.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody get through it? Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Jacob.
Okay, so they're taking this property, and there's an old property line they're moving, and then the remainder, they're chopping it up into 3. So ultimately, it will be 4 lots total, 1 with a house on it, 3 that would be buildable. And our code allows situations where it's impractical to have a street to allow an easement to be the means of access. So it's a private drive. And the T shape on there kind of shows at least the shared paving improvements. The easement is kind of around that. You can see the dashed line. And so staff tentatively approved it. And the decision was appealed by a neighbor based on a tree issue. That's why we have an arborist report in here. But also what happened around that time, we received a response from Columbia River Fire and Rescue as well as our city engineering department. And if it was not for the appeal, I would have probably amended the decision to incorporate their comments. But since there was the appeal, we would come back anyways. So this deals with the subject of the appeal, which is really the tree on the adjacent neighbor's property, at least predominantly on the adjacent neighbor's property. And then some of the comments
as I mentioned. So I'm gonna start with the comments, because of those are the agency comments, that's the easy part. Our code, based on accessing two lots, now we're just talking about the two lots in the back. The two in the front have access from 21st Street. So requires a minimum pavement width of 10 feet. The fire department, upon looking at it, as well as other access challenges of 21st Street itself, said, you know, they really want to see 12 feet wide to help mitigate some of the limited access. So that's been incorporated as a condition. It's in red in the conditions. You can see some of those changes from the original conditions prior to the appeal. And then the city engineering manager basically had a little bit more input as to stormwater requirements. And you'll see those incorporated in there as well. If you have questions on those, we can tackle them, but I suspect most of the testimony and stuff is gonna be about the tree issue itself. So here's an overall. You can see Kraus Way there on the right, 21st Street there on the south side. And if we go to the next slide. So whenever we have a land division, we have a tree plan requirement. And that includes inventorying, okay, what do we have? And then what can we save? What can we protect? What can we mitigate? That whole stuff. And in this case, you're taking a large lot, adding a lot of density, and they're saying, well, we have to get rid of the trees. But it's trees on the property, and so the tree in question is drawn in green. Now, the green dot is not something that was submitted by the applicant. I just added that to help you with some visual context. The tree is predominantly on the adjacent property, but a tree is more than its trunk. It includes a root system. And if we go to the next slide, so this is the fence line. The tree of question is behind the fence. You can see a couple trees on this side of the fence. This is being photographed from the subject property itself. And then the next photo is just peeking over that fence and going, okay, well, the fence is pretty close to that tree. And it's a pretty big tree. So we know there's root system on the subject property. And then now here's the last sheet that I just edited just a little bit. And what this gives you an idea of the potential building footprint. So when we talk about building footprint, basically that means the lot and all of the yard or setbacks taken out that shows where a building can be potentially placed. And the tree plan is supposed to include, you know, the now and the future. And usually it's you know, fairly straightforward. Okay, well, there's a tree on there. You show to protect it, and it's on the property. In this case, you have this large tree really close to the property line. And so, okay, well, this is kind of a riddle. And the purpose of the appellant appealing or challenging the decision is basically to protect the tree. And these appeals always give us more opportunity to think about it. And so I'm just trying to think about the long-term protection, you know, after the home is built, what can happen. And so just brainstorming today, you know, I thought about an easement. You know, the one thing we hear, someone purchases a property, you know, there's some issue, right? There's some regulation. The realtor didn't tell me this. I didn't know about that. You know, that's something that we hear, you know, occasionally.
And so, thinking about this, is there a way to alert future property owners of the issue? And usually that's something on the deed. So I'm not saying I'm hell bent on an easement. It's just to start thinking about the future protection in addition to the current. So the conditions, if we look at the conditions, the ones specifically pertaining to this tree are highlighted in yellow. So it requires the tree plan, and we need a protection program defining how the Douglas fir will be protected during and after development. So the applicant did attain the services of an arborist to at least look at the property. Now, this letter itself is not a tree plan. It doesn't check all the boxes, but it is at least an analysis to start looking at this potentially confined area. If the side setback is only 5 feet and this large tree is so close to that line, there's gonna be roots probably into the building footprint. And can that be resolved without compromising the tree? Really, that's the main question. So just to talk about some of the things that this doesn't address. It doesn't really talk about how it's going to be protected during construction. It says an arborist would go look at it. It just talks about excavation, and there's a little bit more than excavation that happens during construction. It also doesn't address the long term, as I mentioned, either. And one question for the commission, do you think this condition just takes care of it and no amendment is needed? Or do you think there should be a little bit more definition from this body about the tree protection? And I'm not sure. We'll have to see how the testimony goes from there. So that's the major issue. Probably enough blabbing for me for now.
Can you address the engineers, how do you retain all the stormwater on the property?
So we should talk about that a little bit. We know it's a problem area for stormwater, and this is a large lot with a lot of impervious area. This is gonna add a whole lot of impervious area. And so there are ways to do it. In the preliminary plat, they had some ditches proposed. Of course, one of those ditches was in the tree's root zone, and so that would have to change. It's basically having things that takes that stormwater, retains it enough so it doesn't spill onto another property. Usually it's some type of stormwater facility, like when we see in a subdivision. We're proposing a more simpler thing here. But what our city engineer manager is saying is if you can't prove that, we still need to address it. So then they're saying, okay, well, if you can't show that that's gonna work, then we need to extend a storm drain from 21st. So there could be a public improvement to help ensure stormwater doesn't become a problem for the downstream folks. Any more? Did that satisfy that question? Any more questions for me before we hear the parties that be?
Applicant have a presentation?
Yeah, so the applicant, they're the original ones with the burden of proof, and so they would be the first ones to testify. And a lot of times the applicant is also the appellant, but not in this case. So it would be the applicant first, and then the appellant would follow, and then anybody else. I guess that would be Brady. You're the only other person in the room, so.
Pretty good.
Good evening. So I'm Andrew Nemi with Lower Columbia Engineering and we represent the applicant in this case. And first I'll address the two issues that came in later. Jacob, sure don't have a problem going from 10 feet to 12 feet on the width of the driveway. There's room to accommodate that, so that's not a concern. As far as the storm drainage goes, you know, I'm a licensed professional engineer, work on storm drainage projects in this town and community on a weekly, if not daily basis. So that's something, honestly, whether it's a requirement of the city or not, we take a look at. We want to make sure with every project that we're not adding any more water to a neighboring property than the pre-developed condition would impose. So that's something that we'll be addressing and especially in light of the city engineer's comment, we'll be either proposing most likely. There's a few different tricks we'll use on these smaller lots with potentially either what we call infiltrator chambers, which are similar to like if you're familiar with them, a drainage chamber that's used with septic drain fields, basically either an arch or a trapezoidal shaped section that has some storage capacity and then slowly over time infiltrates the water into the ground. Those work pretty well for particularly roof runoff where you could have leaves, that sort of thing, entering the system because they allow for the ability to decompose some of that material. Could also be an open swale that detains the water long enough to ensure that it doesn't leave the property at any greater rate than before this development is put in. So we'll be making sure that box is checked. As far as the tree on the neighbor's property, that's the source of this appeal, as I understand it. You know, I'll say, you know, first and foremost, I'm a tree lover myself. I was just planting about 50 trees before I came over here. For what it's worth, our property that we developed for our office on McNulty Way, some of you may be familiar with it. It's probably got one of the largest mature stands of Douglas fir anywhere in the city of St. Helens. So I'm very familiar with developing close to Douglas fir trees. You know, we do see this quite often with our office there. I, you know, went against the advice of many folks that are like, why are you leaving those trees so close to your office? We have one mature fir tree in particular that's about this same distance from the corner of our office. And we carefully excavated around the roots and not had any problems with that tree. Similarly, we had a storm swale go in on the property. That's now a public storm swale facility that involved cutting very close to the roots, actually even much closer than this, to a similarly sized Doug fir tree. And understandably, the city raised concerns over that excavation. We had this same arborist involved in that project, was involved in the excavation to make sure it was properly done. His advice was followed. We have not had any problems with that tree. And so those, I bring them up because they're both cases where we chose to preserve the tree, where a lot of people nowadays are just quick with the concerns over liability and risk to just cut down every tree that could possibly be affected by a project. I will say that in this case, my client sitting behind me here, he told me, and this is rare, I'll tell you, for developers, he said, hey, go to Mr. Kenny and offered, you know, we're willing to work with him. Let's just hear what his concerns are. If it's a matter of safely removing the tree, modifying it, doing some wind sailing, cleaning up some of the branches, Brad was totally willing to pay for that. If it was determined it was safest to remove the tree, Brad was willing to remove the tree, even compensate him something for the price of the tree, for the value of the tree. We offered to do a stump carving to help memorialize it if that was of concern to him, and he wouldn't even discuss any of these options with me. And that was kind of frustrating. So after that, we decided, okay, we better get an arborist involved. That's when we had Mr. Fielding come out and assess the tree. And, you know, basically what he's saying in his report here, sounds like you guys did have time to read it, which I appreciate. It came in kind of late, but he's saying that he doesn't anticipate any anchor roots that are larger than 1.5 inches in diameter at this distance from the tree, which is about 7 feet if we were building right on the 5-foot setback. He's recommending that during the excavation that he be present and that excavation be done by hand to first expose the roots. And then if any roots are encountered, that they would be dealt with per his instructions, which is basically if it's under 1.5 inches in diameter, loppers make a clean cut. If it's larger than that, it's cutting with a blade rather than chainsaw to make sure the roots are, less prone to disease, that sort of thing. One of the things I did try, then again, reaching out to Mr. Tenney after we met with the arborist, because in the arborist, he didn't put this in his report, but he mentioned to me specifically that the biggest safety concern in his range with trees like that is just the danger from falling branches. This tree in particular has a lot of large branches because it's growing in an area pretty much by itself. And so I was trying to reach out to Mr. Tenney to say that when this tree is cleaned up for the purpose of this project, some of the branches are gonna have to be removed. And in my opinion, it would be best if this was done in collaboration with the owner of the tree, by means of climbing the tree. That's the arborist's preferred way of doing limb removal and maintenance. But if the neighbor's not open to that, then we've got to basically do it from the project side with a bucket, which doesn't give us the ability to remove or clean up any of the branches on Mr. Tenney's side. So in my opinion, it's a lost opportunity if he's not willing to work with us to let the arborist take a holistic approach to cleaning up the tree. I will say, as far as the proposed easement goes, this is my personal opinion, that's a concerning proposition, just the precedence that it could set. I have been doing this type of work for over 20 years. I can say honestly, I've never once seen a tree on a neighbor's property dictate a development on a subject property that would otherwise be allowed by the rules in place. I'm sure maybe it has happened, but I've never seen it. So that to me would be a little bit concerning to mandate that a property owner would be encumbered by a tree on somebody else's property. But I understand that's your guys' decision to make. Anyway, that's all I have on the matter. Do you guys have any questions for me?
Questions?
All right, thanks for your time.
Nate, would you like to make a presentation?
My biggest
Can
concern,
you come up to the front, please? State your name for the record. Thank you.
is.
Can you state your name? Can you state your name for the record?
Harold Tinney.
Thank you.
I'm worried about the tree. I have roots on my side that are 10 feet away from the base that are 9 inches. They want to cut through those roots 5 feet off of that fence. That's roughly 7 feet. That's the stability of that tree is not going to be the same. It's a big tree. I don't want to cut. I don't want to take it down. It's part of my property. I'm worried about the safety if they do cut through those, because there's my house, there's my neighbor's house. There'll be 2 other houses that they're putting in. It's a safety concern for me. I mean, I've talked to a couple arborists. I couldn't get anybody out because they're so busy with all the weather and stuff. They had told me a tree of that size should be minimum 27 feet around the base. There's like I say, I've got big roots on my side. I know there's roots on that side that are bigger than 1.5 inches. That's a big tree. I don't know exactly how far out the house comes from the back side of that lot, how far forward it would be into that root system. And I can't really tell by the drawings of it. I know that tree is about 48 to 50 feet from the back side of their lot. But my major concern is safety. A couple of the limbs taken off, I'm not that worried about a few limbs. I don't want it limbed up halfway. But I understand that, and I'm not against somebody building a house. I'm more concerned about safety. I mean, I don't wanna have to worry about that tree coming down because there's no stability. And then the whole drainage thing that I saw around the edge of the house was a 2-foot drainage ditch, which would have been right on, you know, right on the fence line. Then, you know, the house sitting 5 feet on the other side, that's. And I don't know how deep a foundation's gonna be, but you can cut through some roots. There's also the fact that there's a lot of water runs through that area. Underground springs. I have a neighbor who's got a sump pump in his basement, runs 24/7. That tree takes a lot of water off of that property. There's gonna be definitely some groundwater if that tree was to be taken out, which I don't want it taken out. I know he had come by and offered me $2,000 to take my tree down. That's not even close to what that tree's worth. So that's my biggest issue is the cutting of the roots and, you know, don't need anybody being in danger of that tree coming down. Easement. That would be a little, that would be better for everybody involved. Whoever buys the home there. Let them know. And then another thing is, you know, running equipment over those routes too. How much equipment's gonna be run over them and disturbing everything, you know, that holds that tree up. But that's my biggest issue. Is I don't wanna have to worry about that tree coming down because there's no stability left. Only on one side.
Anybody have any questions? Thank you. These questions become a little different since it's an appeal, and any testimony in support of the application, the question's the same, I guess, or? Any other testimony in support of the application? Seeing none. Any neutral testimony, those who are not in favor or against the proposal? Seeing none. Any testimony in opposition of the application? Seeing none. Does the commission have any final questions? Anybody?
Well, there would be an opportunity for rebuttal.
Okay, even though there's no. I guess what are you rebutting?
The applicant is still the applicant.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, I'll just add a couple brief statements in rebuttal. The only reason the proposal to take the tree out came up was because when I went to visit with Mr. Kinney the first time, he specifically said that his primary concern was safety for the neighborhood. And, you know, I think we all know that if you're living around a big Douglas fir tree, if you want 100% safety, I guarantee you 100% safety that there is zero danger. Unfortunately, the only way to guarantee that is to take the tree out safely. So that's when I mentioned that Mr. Hendrickson, the applicant, was willing to not only pay to safely remove the tree, but compensate him some amount. Interestingly, we didn't have a discussion about, you know, Brad hadn't even told me the specific amount he was willing to pay. But Mr. Kinney did say, you know, he wasn't interested in, he's just concerned about public safety. But then he did ask how much. I said, I don't know. I mean, I was just trying to start the discussion somewhere. So that's when I mentioned, you know, would $2,000 do it? Because when someone says to me, how much, or is he willing, that means they are open to that.
Is there a price?
Yeah, is there a price? So that was just to start the discussion. But personally, for what it's worth, I would rather see that tree stay. I was thrilled when the arborist looked at it and he said, yeah, digging here is not gonna be a problem at all. So we've got, not only is he a certified arborist, he's a certified tree risk assessor. I mean, this is what this guy does for a living. He's been doing it for, I'm guessing 30+ years. He's experienced. He's a breath of fresh air, honestly, because I see plenty of arborists nowadays that, yep, trees gotta go. And we see it all the time, right? You have a project, every tree within 20, 30 feet is taken down. So to me, that arborist report was a real breath of fresh air that he's saying, no, this isn't a concern. He's licensed, he's insured, and he's willing to say this tree can remain. And to me, that's a win-win. So that's all that is.
Sounds like there's alternatives to the drainage ditch being dug there.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. Yeah, we will not put any drainage facilities in that area. And that is one plus to the system. You know, for years, the approach to storm drainage design was capture all the water, get it offsite. That system that I mentioned with the infiltrator chambers, that's one major advantage of that system is you're really disposing of the water that would have otherwise been disposed of on that site, still on the site in a slow manner. So we're not robbing these trees that will remain of the water that they rely on to remain healthy. We're slowly putting it back into the ground. So I assure you, we will put deliberate design into that storm drainage system that responsibly distributes that water back onto the property without it being a problem. More questions?
Yeah, you mentioned limbing the tree on this side as well. But the arborist doesn't make any mention of limbing the tree. Would you have the arborist on site for that limbing and recommending as well? Because you know that you can only limb so much before it starts to cause damage, so.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm really, if we're gonna keep the tree, concerned about its health as well and the safety. I specifically asked him about that because I'll be honest with you. I was concerned that if we just took the limbs on the one side where the development's occurring, that, I'm a structural guy, so I'm thinking, this is gonna create an eccentric loading that could be of concern. And he said, in my experience, you could take all the limbs off this tree, leave a few of them, one side, the other side, and that's not what's gonna determine whether or not this tree survives or comes.
Structurally so much, but more rot.
What's that?
Not structurally so much, but more rot.
Yeah, he was just basically saying that, a healthy tree's probably gonna do fine with it. But yeah, he would be the one doing the limb removal. And if we don't have the permission from Mr. Tenney to climb the tree, which is the preferred way to take those limbs, and we've done that with some of those big trees I mentioned around our office where we had the arborist climb the tree, cut the limbs safely, lower them down because of the proximity to the building. That would be the preferred way to do this, but without permission to climb the tree on Mr. Tenney's property, you'd be doing it with a bucket, where we've established where the property line's at to make sure we're not crossing it, coming off whatever, 2-3 feet to play it safe, and the arborist himself would be cutting those branches from a bucket.
Any other questions?
Oh, Well, the survey, the tree survey that you did on the site, how many of those, I can't remember, how many were gonna be preserved? Yeah, let's see if I can. Because Mr. Finney is talking about, using the tree as a kind of a soak away. I wonder if the other trees can also help mitigate that. Can't remember if that was a condition of the approval, Jacob. Typically, for every tree that's taken down, we plant 2 more. That's all I can say is I sure think that would be an appropriate condition if it's not already.
Yeah, it's folded in there, but basically you see a bunch of X's. They're basically saying it's impractical to keep any tree.
Because if you're planting it, the plantings will actually won't be growing, be all that big to suck up the water, so for a long time. I know it's an interesting concern. I mean, that's we'll take a deliberate approach as with the storm drainage to figuring out what's done with the landscaping, but it's I think worth saying that the zoning for this property is really what's encouraging this type of development. And it's been expressed, at least from the state level, that we need more of this type of housing. And so fortunately, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't have high density development. You can't keep all the mature trees that we'd all like to. So, with with a project like this, and, you know, you leave the trees that you can. I think unfortunately, honestly, that we can make the big tree based on that arbor report, but yeah, most of them on the subject property, and I think a lot of those were black locust, not native trees even. Yeah, these are all labeled as black locust, so we usually push for bringing back in native plants and trees that are appropriate for the development conditions. So that would be our focus with the plant.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
Hearing no further questions from the commission, no further response from staff, are we at that point? The public record is closed and this matter is returned to the table for deliberation and oral decision. Deliberation?
Well, a quick look at the diameter, and this is what I could find online was like 3 times the diameter, which is, you know, 10 feet. But I think if you have an arborist on site, you know, to the property owners, the appellant, he assessed their tree. To the owners of the new property, that is their property. Now, anybody will tell you when you plant things on the property line, even if it isn't a tree, nothing to stop me from dumping gasoline on one side of the property line and killing everything on your lot. I mean, you know, there's some good neighborly stuff going on there, if you're able to work together and do your best kind of thing, because I think there's nothing in the code that says we can do anything, is there? To save a tree?
Well, we have the
I mean, reasonable,
protection plan, which is required.
right? But if he digs 5 feet from that fence and the tree dies, there's nothing happens to him. You know what I'm saying? I'm just asking, worst case scenario, he does his construction and the tree still dies. He didn't touch the other property, he didn't touch their property and trees die.
That's.
Well, it all depends, so I mean.
I mean, I'm just saying.
If you can prove that that caused the tree to die, then the person who killed the tree, even if it's on their side, can be liable for damages up to 3 times the value of the tree. I've been through a tree thing recently, why I was asking about the limbs as well, because I'm concerned about that. You can't cut every limb off of a tree and expect it to live it well, and you can't cut them close to the base.
As a hedge, a holly tree leaning over my fence, I can cut over everything that comes over the fence.
Yes, but if you cause it to die, they can technically come after you for it, whether they do or not. And I don't know if it applies to shrubs, just to trees, because that was my recent experience, but if what's done on one side of the fence, if your tree is on this side, but what's done on this side causes that to die, you do have recourse.
Civil, right?
Yeah.
What do you got?
Well, it's an interesting thing to consider. I mean, one is preserve. But you also have the people who, you know, should be able to develop unencumbered, you know, to the point of the city code, of course. But, I don't know, I mean, I would have to lean more towards owners of the property to be able to develop on that. But I can, you know, sympathize with Mr. Tenney. And I'm not 100% on that either, you know, either way. So not being much help.
I think as long as the owners of the subject property that could be developing, take the things that they're saying that they're willing to do with the arborist and coming in that way, protecting it. I understand Mr. Tenney's point that there could be roots that are larger than the 1.5 inches going over that way. I would think that doing that and doing the hand excavation around the root system there, you know, if it does run into something where it is much larger than the 1.5 inches that, say it that way, that then there would have to be something done to look at that.
Can we make that a condition that arborist is on site during the excavation?
Yeah, I think, we have the kind of the default decision about needing, the protection program defining that will be protected. I think there's a for reasonable further definition of that, which could include, that an arborist is on site for, certain aspects. Or, maybe they, observe the site for critical, events such as excavation. And then perhaps, on some occurrence, just to ensure, some workers aren't, what do you piling stuff there for? That's right on the, because sometimes the rank and file folks in the field aren't as aware of the requirements. Ideally, they should be, but, it's a matter of practice. It's just not the case. And so, and we can't just sit out there, like a lifeguard in a tower with a whistle, that's just impractical. And I don't see the council hiring enough staff for us to do that. Oh, okay.
I think the tree easement is setting a terrible precedent. I don't like that idea at all. The tree easement is setting a terrible
And
precedent.
it was just trying to think of.
Something creative, but yeah, I think
long-term
it's-
implication, which it's kind of tough.
I mean, the one thing, and I don't even know what I'm about ready to say, but I'm gonna go ahead and say it. The one thing we look at a lot of times when we have the potentials for disputes is, he could have possibly had a dueling arborist come in. And you have that where you got one arborist saying one thing, another arborist saying another thing, and a lot of our things that I get involved in, then you said, okay, we'll have a neutral third party that's chosen by whatever that comes in and makes a decision. That's putting a lot of things in, and I don't know if we even have the power to do that. But that's just an idea in my head, because I started to say, well, I wish you had an arborist in here, but what if he came in and said exactly the opposite of what their arborist did?
Yeah.
Then we're kind of stuck that way. So again, I didn't know what I was gonna say, but I said it
All
anyway.
right. Do you have any other comments?
No.
Anybody else have any other comments?
I wonder if a compromise could not be made if some, take legal liability of it falling over for 5 years, then diminish it through 10 years.
What happens if you have 100-mile-an-hour winds?
Yeah.
You just don't know.
Not
gonna do
You just don't know.
Tying it to.
I tell you one thing,
I mean, I'm just looking for a way forward.
yeah, Andrew and I have already talked about the possibility of making the house a little smaller and a little less wide, so we don't get as close to the property line, like maybe it's 7.5 feet. I totally agree with you. I mean, I don't want it falling over. I don't want it falling over on the new houses, the new people, or their little kids or whatever, right? So we're gonna build as safely as we possibly can. We will absolutely have the arborist there when it's time to excavate. But yeah, as far as it's Mother Nature. You just don't know Mother Nature. And sadly say, she's getting a little more angry out there, see.
I mean, here, what was that, the 115-degree summer? There were pine trees and fir trees all over the place that died, and nobody dug a hole anywhere.
Yeah.
So you don't know, trees are, they're not forever.
I lost my tree, yeah.
I had a pine tree right in my front yard, just go around.
We're gonna do everything we can. We will do as safely as humanly possible.
Thank you. All right, do we have a motion?
So what are we doing to, is it kind of, we're denying the appeal, or is that what we're doing?
Yeah, so-
Denying or accepting the appeal, one way or the other, right?
Yeah, so you can uphold the decision with the conditions as modified. Currently, the ones modified pertain to the comments from the fire department and the engineering division. The ones specific to the tree highlighted in yellow, those are still from the original condition.
the question, if you're thinking of upholding the decision and not reversing it and denying it, which I haven't heard an inclination of it, but you know, you have your deliberations, would be, do you want to provide any additional guidance for that tree protection plan other than what's in here? And an example of that is what you have mentioned, you know, that specific, that they be on site for certain things.
But you listed that here in C. A certified arborist shall be used for at least the following. Site mitigation, offsite mitigation, protection program. So you've already listed that
Yeah, it just doesn't specifically say,
for
you
excavation.
know, it means the plan is there, but it doesn't say the arborist shall be there at certain times. And so, if that was a condition, you know, when we review the protection plan, we would want to make sure, and it's kind of talked about in, Mr. Fielding's letter. When the excavation takes place, I'd recommend that a certified arborist be present so that an initial hand dig can evaluate the size of the roots. So they're kind of suggesting, you know, they would be there for that particular event. You can, now this is, you know, this letter by itself is not a protection plan. It incorporates elements of it. So if you want to be sure that that presence is there, then you just add that to the conditions.
Okay,
And then we need to add the 12-foot wide driveway then and the
right.
recommendation from the.
Move we approve the uphold the original decision, adding the engineers adjustment and the fire department adjustment and adjustments as directed by staff. Because that's what you just talked about.
So are you breaking it into a couple motions?
No, it's all three, adding the fire department, engineering, and the tree particulars as discussed.
Oh, okay. So we need to make sure we're on the same page for the particulars.
That would be arborist on site during excavation.
Yeah, that was the,
And
limbing.
Hand digging.
Limbing, right?
limbing, yes, I would like it.
This is my limbing.
Okay.
Right.
Seamstress.
That's not accurate.
So that was my motion.
You have a second?
I second.
All those in favor of upholding the decision, is that the right question?
With the modification.
With the as modified?
With apologies to Mr. Tenney, I have to say aye.
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 They sell really good trees around. More trees, more better. Oh, and do we sign?
Motion for.
Motion to move that we, hold on, the signature. When it's ready. Second.
In favor?
Aye.
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 So if we didn't vote aye on that, then you'd have to come in,
Right, the tie?
yeah, or, no, I mean, not come in and sign off.
It would come back the next meeting.
The applicant would have to wait a month to get
I
approval.
would wait and clear until next month.
There are some final comments. Appeal comments.
The last page. Final written decision of the planning commission may be appealed to the city council. The notice of decision will be mailed to all persons who testified or submitted comments, and the appeal deadline will be included in the notice.
Yeah, that's actually not true.
Yeah, that's what I have.
It would be,
Question.
it could be appealed to the Land Use Board of Appeals. There's only one appellate authority. The scripts aren't perfect, they don't address.
Yeah.
So there will be a final decision that you will receive with your legal rights noted.
The timing on that, Jacob? As far as receiving it?
Century?
Seems like.
We would, our goal would be to
have the final decision this week or next week. Usually it's the same week. But sometimes, you know,
Get a cold. Yeah.
Not bad, like-
Or 2 weeks.
Get more hair.
yeah, so it should be, no later than next week.
Go run. Yeah.
All right, thanks, guys.
I will, problem at all.
Thanks, guys.
Good night.
I don't try to be, this is,
No, I don't think you're working at all.
I have you.
I think we are.
Keep
on asking.
You hear all this from these seats. You're like hearing it over there what's next. You're sitting.
No, there's stuff that comes out of this decision in the last. And so if I say nothing, then I'm just as guilty. It's important to have the conversation, even if we still make the same decision, then we put it in the process. Even, I remember that with the old commission, when everybody knew everything, it's like, it looked like they never.
Yeah, we don't have any of that institutional knowledge anymore except for you.
Right, but I mean, all the dialogue and all the stuff that Greg and Audrey and Sheila and all those guys, like, if you don't have the conversation, they don't feel like they got the due diligence and not enough goes into the record.
See your point?
Yeah, it's like, you learn the more conversations you have about why, the better you're able. And most of it, when you're in the future. Yeah.
I'm retired.
See this?
So are you gonna retire?
This year.
Will the office change who's in there?
Ellie's gone and she went to work for so Williams are franchises. Her franchise is one, the one over by that it's a different franchise. Well, left us and then.
Yeah.
Is that weird?
When you have to summarize too.
Good for everybody.
And who is gonna work for you? And when is Jane gonna retire?
Next year.
Both of you?
Take it over. He's capable. He's been a realtor for 8 years.
Yeah, I'm working on that.
There will, I'm not good meeting.
Sorry.
It said quick.
Not time for chatting, okay.
All right. Discussion items, architectural review. Everyone follow?
Yeah, so, we're just gonna talk about this property 4 times a year, it seems like.
This is going on and on and on.
No, it really shouldn't. I think it's simple. But we do have 2 commissioners who haven't viewed the other previous proposals. We also have Holcomb here and their his architect online. And so I want to honor that and have them, they can answer questions too. So I'll make my part really quick. I just want to summarize the changes that we're looking at tonight so that we don't get into too much of the things that we've already blessed. So I made myself a cheat sheet and highlighted the sections. I didn't do that for you. I did not have time, but just keep in mind that with previous approvals, so let me back up. We're at Klondike Tavern, in case you weren't aware, 71 Cowlitz. This property is subject to architectural review for our guideline or our Riverfront District guidelines. And so what that means is you are not a decision maker, you are a recommending body to staff to then say, okay, this complies with the Riverfront District guidelines. So we've done 2 reviews of this previously. And what was looked at before was an addition of the porch patio. So this is on First, this is from First Street looking at the patio, the Klondike. There were 682 square foot porch addition, covered porch addition, so that was reviewed previously. And then there was a new basement entry here, that was reviewed previously. And then the side profile, just to show you, had these accordion style weather, windows added, that was reviewed previously. This is the porch addition. That was reviewed previously, and then there was, I think this door was added. So all of that's been looked at, and I don't wanna spend too much time on that. The main thing that Holcomb is now proposing, if you remember in a previous proposal, he had an ADA lift, which brought people from the ground level up to the main floor of the restaurant. That is proposed to be removed, and be replaced because of the funding he got for an elevator. So the elevator would serve, all levels, not like the ADA lift that was just for, the first level. And it has a huge visual impact on this elevation, so, I'll let Holcomb talk about the specifics of that. I also want to point out, because it's a little bit confusing, the new elevator requires, what did you call it, bridges to each level. So you can see that this is a new element added to the building to connect the elevator shaft to each floor. And you can see that on the other elevation as well. Here, so these are new bridges to the levels of the floor. And on those bridges, he's proposing new windows. So this is a new window, this is a new window to match the others. And then on the other elevation, these are new, these 3 windows are all new.
Okay, sliders?
No.
Um, yeah, wood framed fixed glass windows are what the proposal shows. And then I also point out, because well, let's just talk about it. The previous historically, the previous facade, let me show you. I think it's in Holcomb. I know, I'm sorry. So I just wanted to show you this part because the front of it is really historic. So this is the building that we're looking at. And you can see the original St. Helens Hotel block, the facade that we're messing with on the west elevation.
The old opera house used to sit in the plaza.
Oh, this was moved?
To there.
Oh, it says that here, yeah. I read it. In a couple weeks. And so, you know, the guidelines talk about the main entry and like the distance from the street to that entry, and, you know, we're not really changing that. It's been modified so much already that I don't think that the guidelines really apply in this circumstance. Because that entry was never there. The entry into the restaurant today was never there. Run through some stuff, but should I run through this, Jennifer, or do you want to ask Holcomb to come up? Holcomb? So just tell me where you'd like to go on, and I will.
Would you want me to kind of just real quickly talk to the overall process? Okay, I kind of articulated in this document, but you know, originally that top drawing was kind of our very early, no information, nothing concept of what we were trying to do, which was we were trying to put an elevator tower near the main entrance, which will become the hotel entrance, which would bridge to the building. You can kind of see that's the tower, and those are the elements that bridge to the building. So we're not trying to interfere too much with the structure of the building. And then if you go down, what we kind of discovered in this phase, once we got the funding from Travel Oregon to put $100,000 towards an elevator, the elevator has to be really tall. It has to be almost like a demi floor taller than the top floor. And so we were looking at this, and our impression was, well, if we're gonna build a tower, let's look at what towers look like, because we can't really hide it. So if you scroll down, the part of the guidelines we kind of focused on is for new additions and new construction. You're supposed to kind of reflect the architectural features of the town and the materials and what's there. And we consider this a new addition to a historic building that has no precedent. Obviously, there was no elevator tower on it. But I think the thing we really focused in on was the courthouse, because the courthouse has the same kind of low sloping roof, and then it has this kind of peaked tower. So originally, so the first design of this actually we put a clock on it. And I thought it was so cute, and everyone just thought it was so cute. And we sent it to Joyce Sears at
I'm sure she
the
is.
State Department, Historic Preservation, and she said, I love, just take the clock off unless you have evidence there was a clock on this property. And so we took the clock off more or less, and a few other little tweaks, and that's the proposal for you today, which has now been incorporated into our state approved preservation plan. So this.
For the other commissioners, let me describe it from a bureaucracy standpoint.
Okay.
So this property is considered a special assessment property, which means Holcomb gets a tax break, but has to follow a regulated preservation plan by the State Historic Preservation Office. And those get sent to us, so we make sure that there's compliance there, and Holcomb's already done that legwork and made sure that it complies.
And so this is how we landed at this approach. And obviously it has this peaked kind of witch hat roof thing. I think the purpose of which really is so that from ground level, you can see the roof and it doesn't just look like a rim. And I guess a few of the things we were considering architecturally speaking is we want it to look like of a piece with the building, but we also want it to look kind of separate. And so it wants to sort of, your average person will look and just say, what an amazing, beautiful grand building here in beautiful downtown St. Helens. It kind of reminds me of the clock tower. It fits right in. It looks so great from the ridge. But if you take a closer look, you see that all of the new windows, with a couple exceptions I'll point out, are, historic wood single light windows instead of double hung windows, but they are wood windows. But they're not the double hung in the original structure, which kind of wraps around it. And then another difference is that the roofing material we're proposing is matte black seamed metal. And that will be the same color as the roof, but will be a different material. And part of the reason for that is just to kind of just make it a little distinguished architecturally, but also because the sloping of the porch is so low slope, it requires something else.
Bo was okay with that metal.
Shippo? Yeah. It wasn't actually something we discussed specifically, but it's in the plans. So we were proposing a matte black seamed roof.
And the porch addition also has a metal roof, is shown on the plans.
Yeah.
But the color was bronze.
Yeah, that's it. We were correct that to say matte black.
So it would match the porch would match the roof
The color of the midnight charcoal.
tower.
The
Elevator tower roof.
asphalt shingle that we just put on.
Oh, okay, and the color matches, it's just not the material. Okay, okay.
We'd be going for the closest match we could get, which was what we thought, from our sample, this is called matte black.
I like that it's different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the guidelines do talk about making sure you're not creating a false sense of.
Yeah, you don't.
That's right.
I'm into thinking that it would be.
Yeah.
We want to have enough sort of architectural features that sort of signal that this is a distinct thing, but it's going to have the same siding and the same siding materials and the same trim, so it will unify it. I guess the exceptions for windows. So this is not like.
Yeah, let me pull the plans. I think this was a scanned.
Yeah.
Let me pull the actual digital plans here. You're gonna have to get dizzy while I scroll. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's on this one, isn't it? That shows these
Yeah.
top windows.
Oh, yeah.
They're way bigger.
Solarium windows.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that a little bit.
Other elevation or this, can you talk about these ones first?
Well, this one, yeah, these are kind of a simple inoperable wood framed window that kind of looks just like these. These are hallways. They're vestibules to the elevator. So you walk out of the elevator into the vestibule, and then you walk from the vestibule either into the building or like down the hall and into the building. And it's different on every floor. And then here you can see, so there's like a bridging sort of tucked behind the elevator tower. On the second floor, it's actually quite big. It goes into the space of the elevator tower, but not to the end. There's a whole bedroom in there. And we would put an architectural window that literally just as close as possible matches the historic ones. But then on this top floor, it steps back. This is a little piece of sloped roof. It steps back and it's just a narrow hall that people go in to get around, because what's directly kind of in front is the ADA suites. So the ADA person would come out of the elevator into the suite, and other people would walk this way into the down the hall. And this is like a little solarium, and the reason it's sort of tucked in, you can't really see it, and I have some other images that can show you what a little better than this, like they're dimensional. We have an issue, a design issue, which is just that the historic slope of the roof is so shallow, you can see it there, that when we continue it this way, it's too low for code. So the architect had proposed using an existing window system that's very compact to create this little solarium moment on the top floor hallway. And I could show you a kind of a rendering of what it looks like. It's obviously, it's not, we make sure that the colors of it and stuff, you know, conform to the building. The trim would be the color of the trim, that, you know, but it would be a kind of tucked away metal structure.
Is that a roofing then below that?
Yeah,
Asphalt roofing there?
this is more of the matching asphalt shingle roofing. Like probably about like this big, slopes down. So that was sort of our idea, instead of trying to create like a piece of flat roof tucked in there, which seemed like it would interfere more with,
Is that mirrored on the other side? You're trying to create the effect that it looks like a solarium there. You're not trying to make it. I seem to be stuck on sliders tonight.
no, it's not.
I don't want it, I could see it'd be neat if it was metal when it gave you that appearance of a solarium and not trying to match the other double hung windows, but.
Well, when I say solarium, I mean, it's actually, I don't know if you see this, but it's windows replacing the roof. In the area of the hall where the roof would be too low. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
This extends above the roof
Yeah.
line here. Got it.
Well, that is the roof line. It's like, that's a piece of glass coming, it's like, here's the roof
Oh,
like
that's
this,
slope.
and it goes like this shallow little thing. And then it'd be like this glass that continues at like, I don't know, like this far, so that the whole hall is about 4 or 5 feet. And then it just goes down. And it's one contiguous sort of structure that like we purchased it.
Yeah.
To the spec.
Another,
Glass on top.
Yeah.
It's a mini conservatory.
add-on.
It's like, yeah, I mean, when you're in it, I can show you, I was just charging a computer, that makes more sense.
Yeah,
It's-
totally.
It's not very visible, like you could only see it if you were like. Kind of all the way down First Street, kind of looking back at the building, but. Again, it was sort of a solution to the complexity of getting the roof high enough. You can kind of see,
Oh, yeah.
so.
It's not super long.
No, so this is the elevator tower. You can see this is the wider part of the second floor addition, and it goes back, and there'd just be this little piece, and the purpose of it is this.
We do have the floor plans, if that's what you're pulling up.
Well, this is what that vestibule looks like.
Oh, okay, cool.
So the elevator opens to the vestibule, and that hall, if we continue the roof line, it's too low for code if we have joists for a roof. So the designers proposed doing this. And what's nice about it is it's like a little viewing moment where you're kind of looking out to the new 25 acres. You know, seeing whatever we can see once they build whatever they're building next door. So, yeah. So those are the exceptions to the windows, and I think the rest are pretty clear.
So why on the other side are you doing? It says new wood fixed frame glass instead of something that looks like double hungs.
There?
Yeah.
Well, because it's part of the new structure, we didn't want to like make anyone think it's part of the old structure.
And then what was the reasoning for the choice of the vertical siding instead of the horizontal?
Well, again, it was sort of thinking to differentiate, because it's,
Vertical down here.
yeah, it's, so we're using this is the existing vertical siding below this level. So we are using that in this part of the porch. This siding is here, so this would be the same as the main building, but we were gonna just do the vertical. And it would be painted the color of the one of the darker trim colors, like, so it kind of would be trim. I guess the idea was to make it not contiguous with the original structure, but sort of differentiated, yeah, the roof line will be continued to look kind of.
Yeah.
You know, contiguous, but the idea was to bridge the tower to the building in a way that when you look at it, it's of a piece, but you look at the specifics of it, you can see, well, this is the addition.
Can you talk about the fiber cement panel? I had a question on that.
Yeah. Or I guess the thought was to just create, we put a clock there. And it just was a nice detail. Originally, it was just it was siding all the way up with the clock in it, but then, well, we couldn't have a clock, and when we just looked at it, it just looks like it wanted some kind of trim detailing. So
My first thought when I looked at it was a window, and then I was like, oh, fiber cement panel. So then I'm Googling like, what is a fiber cement? And it just seemed like they're all types of shapes and sizes, and they do all kinds of things, so.
it's a neutral flat panel.
But there is sort of a, there's 4 of them, right? Like
Yeah.
there's that detail.
Yeah, it would have, I think it's basically just like a recessed kind of like detail to give it some architectural interest.
More than Batten.
Yeah. Like in a cross and,
Holy.
yeah, as if it's like paneled, just to give it a little bit of,
Rather than just being flat or
Flat.
down below.
yeah, or and when we continue the siding up, it just kind of looked like, well, what's that? But this kind of looks,
Top,
yeah, it gives it a top,
rather than just a witch hat.
right?
We put eyes in there.
I'm happy with this new roof configuration. I hated it when it was lower and flat.
Yeah,
Yeah, it kind of looked like it was trying to hide, but it was like, so,
it looked the wrong date.
oh, good.
It looked like a Best Western.
Yeah, it looked the wrong date.
Perfect, you're speaking my language. Yeah, no, this, as you saw from the other samples, is how they built towers at the time.
For the time period of the building.
Exactly, and we're not trying to be like, oh, we're making a faux Victorian tower, but we are trying to make it look like it's at one with the town and the building. And it is a funny thing that we have, the patio where it is, and we don't really want to change the patio. Everyone says we love the patio, and I think when, the next door neighbors and everyone all the way down is gonna be building right to the street, and it's gonna create this actual kind of special thing. That I think kind of refers a little to the clock tower, and there's space in front of the clock tower. This building will also be one of the only buildings that has kind of a space in front of it.
You have to show us a lighting plan. The plan is their own business.
A lighting plan? The architectural guidelines do talk about certain lighting fixtures, and Holcomb addressed that previously by proposing some gooseneck lighting.
I remember
Yeah.
there was other buildings that we went at great lengths on the lighting that were gonna go to the apartments. I can't remember what that sign says, that go up to the roof. That they were like, is it gonna be recessed? Is it gonna be lit from behind? Is it gonna be cut out? We talked about signage a lot. In the last years. So that's why I just think about exterior lighting and all that. Which that's, down the road.
And I think there was like gooseneck lighting over this door.
Yeah.
originally, But now you have a new awning.
Yeah, it could still be inside the awning.
Just look at all that money you're putting into that elevator tower and all that architecture, I'm like, there's a lot of opportunities for lighting.
For lighting.
Oh, I see, like.
Architectural lighting.
Lighting, yeah, that's kind of outside of our scope.
Yeah, that's his business.
Mhm.
If he wants it to look pretty cool 24 hours a day, that's his business.
I think so.
It's all been reviewed by SHIP already.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, I think they've done a lot of the work for us, really, and if they've approved it, there's certainly harder body to get through.
Yeah, but so just remember, architectural guidelines for Riverfront District are specific to our area.
Yeah.
We're not necessarily like a historic resource review, we had historic preservation standards. That's not what we're applying here, so that we do have different lenses. But yes, it is a comfort to know that SHPO has reviewed it. And blessed it, because if they had changes, then we'd have to be right back here.
But we've looked at this building a lot of times.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can only get so far off the road and we've been through this.
No, for sure.
Where I was stuck when I just glanced at this in small print before was, I thought originally this was gonna be like open railing to the elevator, which I hated. The Best Western, and so I.
I thought it was.
The outside.
Yeah.
No windows there.
Bring your umbrella.
Yeah, that it was.
One of the shots and we received.
Yeah, I saw something that looked like that, it looked like.
It was open.
Open, yeah, I was like, oh, that's terrible, if I got closed.
These can look really cool. I mean, if if SHPO hadn't said you can't put a clock on it, I'd be showing you a clock. But, so I was kind of curious, like,
Why there's no clock?
you don't want a clock, okay, I just was sort of testing the waters.
Well, it could be like an open Belvedere or something, but it can't be that either, cause you gotta get the elevator up in there, so.
I mean, it looks cute, but it does, I think it was just an idea, from our references, but
I think when you do all your lighting plan, I think it'll be just as good as a. clock.
totally. Well, and also we just, I mean, we imagine that in the future, there could be all sorts of interesting things that. I mean, I don't know, but like, it just seems like that tower, that surface, like, if the town had events and they wanted to put a big banner up, you could put the banner there.
It's just a great place for art
Yeah.
down the road, whatever you
If
did.
there were a proposal for a mural or something, it's a new building, it's a new piece of something, it's not historic, so there's opportunities to do things down the road. I just, think we wanted it to look like it was purposeful architecturally.
I'm just pleased that that building's been so big and so needing attention for so long.
I think
It's
you've
gonna
done a
be
really good
Oh,
job.
thank you. I think it's gonna be super, super cool.
Remind me, are you the Klondike at the St. Helens Hotel?
Right now, the thought is to call it the Historic St. Helens Hotel and with the Klondike Tavern. There was some thought about calling it the Klondike Hotel and Tavern. But I think right now
Just recently saw a picture that it had the Klondike in the Morgus building,
oh,
sign that says the Klondike.
there's another Klondike?
I don't know what the connection to the,
Oh, here historic, like a historic photo? The Morgus building?
it was either in the Morgus or the corner of the Muckle. I was surprised to see it.
Oh, I've never seen that.
I'll find it for you.
Where is the Morgus building?
Morgus is next to the Muckle. So it's the one that was Gracie's.
Oh, that's right, that's where I've seen it.
We're really inclined to really dive into the historic aspect of the St. Helens Hotel and everything that goes along with that. Originally, I was really like, oh, it's known as the Klondike, let's call it the Klondike Hotel and Tavern, but it's also the historic St. Helens Hotel, so right now, we're kind of leaning towards that. It's kind of a branding thing we haven't really encountered deeply yet. But I'll show you really quick, just a really pretty picture that's going into. Maybe I don't have it. The idea is, I'm kind of trying to create something sort of like a McMiniman. For some reason I can't make this bigger. No. It's a partially covered concept drawing. But I think the idea is that, kind of like a McMiniman's, it would have, we haven't proposed signage, but we're thinking about proposing signage on the corner, which is a little atypical, but it's sort of like the Kennedy School, a lot of McMinimans do it.
Right,
And it would say the historic St. Helens Hotel.
right, it's like park signage.
Yeah, like a historic signage.
Right.
So when it says the Kennedy Center and it, we have the corner, so it's a nice spot for it. So the idea is that to really kind of play on both the patio and the historic hotel.
One unit.
Yeah. So,
The guy that did my building does the McMiniman signage. He did this.
oh yeah, like
Guy.
carved wood signs
And everything.
with the carved wood.
Yeah, and the gold leaf on.
Yeah, we want
Same guy.
carved wood kind of vibe. And then there's also the historic St. Helens Hotel sign that used to be on the building we sort of recreate. But those are kind of phase 2. So this is gonna be like the end of our phase 1. I'm not coming back.
I really hope. not.
Sure.
Yeah. No, when we come back, it would be phase 2, which is the actual hotel renovation, which needs an egress stairway.
How many rooms is it?
It's 24 tiny rooms now, and it'll be 19 mixed sizes. And it's done.
Exciting for the city.
Yeah, and just to be clear, the hotel isn't establishing occupancy in all of the other floors, that's a future phase.
Future phase, yeah.
This has funding for the elevator, so he's getting that in now.
But that's a big chunk.
It is, and we're also doing all the foundations and.
To get stuff up there, it's gonna be a huge help.
Yeah, and we will be completing seismic towards the completed seismic insofar as anything we open and touch will be part of a greater seismic plan.
Will you be able to use the elevator for the restaurant?
Yeah.
Right away.
Right away, upon completion of this phase.
Right.
Great. family that can't get up to the restaurant.
I mean, there's-
Totally.
A lot of people can get up to the restaurant. Yeah, we have. Yeah, and also if you ever need to get people up there and we're there, you can just call us and we will help you up the stairs. But yeah, still, it's not
Not ideal.
ideal.
All right, is that all you needed?
Motion for recommendation that this complies.
It's just a conversation though.
No, I need a recommendation, like we always do.
Motion for recommendation is complies.
Yeah, sorry, that's.
I make a motion that this recommendation complies.
No, second.
All those in favor?
I,
And that'll include that the metal roof is a matte black.
Matte black seamed metal roof.
Yep. Same as the porch addition and the clock tower, because that was unclear. in the
Yeah.
plans. And
the elevator tower.
yes, I keep
Yeah.
saying clock tower. It's not.
Cause it just is totally a clock tower. But it's a tower.
One per city.
I did notice,
One per downtown area.
Yeah, exactly.
I did notice in this reference and online, even though we're not supposed to say Old Town Design Guidelines, it still does.
Oh, that's this
Well,
narrative.
I was just referring to the,
No, but I think online, one of our documents.
oh yeah, the document is called Old Town Design Guidelines.
Change the document when it was created.
Well, I was just referring to the document.
I know.
I'm glad you remember that resolution.
Yeah.
What are we calling it then?
Riverfront,
Okay, great.
living branding, just like you.
Yeah, riverfront
So
design.
you need to bring your friends into the bank.
Oh,
It's a national
I
bank.
keep hearing about people wanting to buy it, but hasn't sold.
$1 million.
Okay.
I don't know if you, unrelated, not part of a hearing, but, I just watched them redo a hotel in. Where are those?
In
people?
Texas?
Yes,
Oh, in Waco?
yes,
Oh, yeah, that's amazing.
yeah, I watched
It's
that.
amazing.
I
Yeah.
watched all those, I'm a little bit of a, home improvement junkie.
Well, that's totally my vibe.
Yeah,
Everything she does, somebody does.
well, it just seems very suitable.
Is that what-
It's like a little tiny version of that.
All right, let's reel this all.
Go ahead.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Well, I'm a fan of their stuff.
Yeah, and you called me out.
It's the chair.
All right, the Joint Planning Commission City Council meeting discussion.
Yeah, so this is just a reminder for tomorrow. There are 4 things on the agenda. Vacant storefronts starts it off. I think Main Street's involved with that. The second item is the police station location. Now, the important thing is, so we'll have a couple people from McKenzie. The consultant team has been working on it. And they kind of have, 4:30 to 5:30. That's when they're gonna be here, and they have a hard stop at 5:30.
Okay.
And so it's gonna be very important to focus. So we can take full advantage of that time.
Rick Scholl told me we had 20 minutes.
Okay, yeah, we told Mackenzie that, that item 1 should be done by 4:30. So, and then, the 2024 Development Code amendments are on that. That's probably like 15 minutes. The main objective is so the council can hear it, because we'll go back to the council for their blessing to proceed, after the planning commission reviews the text. For the planning commission, it's so you have a general idea of what we're looking at conquering. So when you're reading the text, you have that context rather than what in the belief of the reading. So it's just to give you that context to help you understand, to make your review more efficient in the following months. So I just wanted to do a quick intro, from you for that tomorrow.
Will everybody be there tomorrow?
Maybe, what time does it start?
The agenda, block at 4. Sorry, I was trying to pull this up. Yeah, so there's just what Jacob mentioned. There's the 4 items.
Maybe.
Whether we get to architectural standards, we'll have to see. But it's, it's a listed proactive item, and so it's appropriate to put it on there.
How long is the meeting supposed to go?
There isn't like a cutoff. We don't, I mean, that would be like.
It's the 1 hour thing.
This.
I think this meeting is just gonna bleed right into that one.
Probably.
You wait to see, we have meetings that are ended after midnight. We try not to.
I think the general goal for the joint one is around 2 hours.
Because Mackenzie's here for 1, 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1.
The public meeting, correct?
Yeah, but you'll notice that this is not a visitor comment public meeting.
You know how that goes.
Well, the mayor's presiding, so if he wants to add public comment, he can, but it's not on the agenda.
And no decisions.
There's no decisions. This is it. That's why.
Right.
Yeah, you remember well.
Okay. Planning director decisions? Anybody have any questions about those? Can you kind of brief the new people on that, maybe?
Yeah, sure. So, you being, on this body, you get to be the recipient of all the administrative decisions that we make. Isn't that exciting?
I get them twice.
You get it twice, yeah. And so basically, that means you're aware of the decision, and then we have them here if you have questions about them. Or you're like, hey, staff, why are you screwing this up, or whatever your comments may be. This gives you that opportunity for awareness, education, and, a second pair of eyes, as check and balance. But it's that time of year, we're starting to see more, so that list is a little bit longer than, we've seen.
Longer. Anybody have any questions about that? No, planning department activity report, February.
Yeah, a couple we have some annexations that we'll probably have a hearing on in, May. We started our economic opportunities analysis stuff. The O'Reilly sign, the sign sculpture. We sent a letter to O'Reilly Corporate, that it constitutes an abandoned sign, to hopefully motivate them to, fix it. I'm assuming I'm guessing corporate is not aware of it, and then our letter making them aware of it will facilitate them doing something. That's the hope.
Surprisingly get a lot of questions about that asked. Like you do too? Yeah, it's like, I don't know.
Yeah, so, we're trying to change that. There's some lots in the Ridgecrest subdivision, and none of you were here when Ridgecrest was going on, because that was all, I mean, it was largely before my time. But there was some lots that weren't quite done. The wetland rules took effect, and it just made it kind of weird, but I think we found a way to, make that work. That's all I have to kind of.
I have one bit of exciting news. We got 4 bids for the Riverwalk last week. We're moving forward with the lowest bidder. So council will do that at their next meeting. Came in, just under 3 million is our budget. So highly competitive bids, and I am stoked.
I bet. We just,
When is that gonna start then?
So council blesses us to move forward with contracting. Contracting will occur in April. And then probably notice to proceed in May.
Shovel in the ground?
Shovel in the ground. It's huge.
the museum got a grant too for, I don't know if you saw it in the paper, for the move, we got a $400,000 grant.
Wow, that's huge. Didn't you have another grant for that too? Or was this?
I think this is the one that's been ongoing. Last cycle, it was going to be differently. In this cycle, it to us, so Rainier got theirs too.
Okay.
They got $500,000 in it. So, architectural standards, we haven't made any movement on that. I'm happy that we have all the positions filled so we can get down to business on some of these proactive, items. On the vacant storefronts, I would like to say that, the reason that we're coordinating with, Main Street is at the, I'd like to say request, but the mayor said if we're gonna get this on the agenda, you're gonna work with Main Street. So, although it's been a really positive experience, so I've been talking with Aaron, the president, and we've done a lot of research, looked at a lot, and so I think the coordination will be actually a good relationship. I was hesitant in the beginning to do that. But I think they can help a lot with data and different things, so. That's actually, I'm looking forward to that conversation tomorrow.
You know if Erin's gonna have any slides to add to your,
I saw your email.
I just,
Yeah.
I didn't know if.
I thought she was gonna have the bulk of it, that's why I came in.
And I
with
haven't
a few.
anything.
She checked in with me in end of last week and
Okay, maybe she should.
sounds like they've done a lot of work on it, so I'll check in with her again.
Okay, yeah, if she can get it to me before, like an hour before the meeting, so I just have it ready to go and I don't have to like dig for it. That would be ideal. Yeah.
I can do that. Then for your information items, anything else?
No.
Right?
Just a reminder about the SEI.
She printed copies for.
It's not available to use till Friday.
15th,
Is that what it says? I don't.
I think it was the 15th.
Yeah, cause I tried to access it last week, cause she keeps sending stuff,
Yeah.
and I called them today and they're like, you can't do this until Friday.
Oh,
She's like, I can't get in, I can't get in, it's like, doesn't
I
open.
must have sent it earlier this year, because normally you go in the same day she sends me the notice, I've been kind of.
Yeah, I've gotten, it's been on notices for a little while, and I'm like,
I think it said in one of the emails that we couldn't go on until the 15th.
yeah, I was like, I thought I'd missed it, cause I've been out of town, and so I was trying to log in, and I was like, I called them. My login's not working, it's like, it's not time yet.
We are adjourned.
Hold on.
Hey.